It's Hey, how's everyone doing?
Well,
Welcome to the Wage
hopefully
Cage
everyone.
edition. Let's see, before we start talking, let's just take a look and see if there's anything in the chat. Will you create a true cell high IQ subhuman only Discord server? You know, I thought about it. I actually, if any of you remember back in the Inkwell Maddox days, I actually have my server that I ran back then as a spin-off server. I never deleted that server. It's still there. It's fully functional. I could set it up tomorrow and start using it. But it's just such a pain in the ass to do Discord servers because people it ends up getting like political in a weird way. People start treating it like it's a fiefdom, and like they start struggling for influence in the moderator section. It just becomes really fucking weird. I remember that's what I really despised about Discord and that sort of thing. But I might. It depends. Anyways, yeah, as we were saying, this is the Wage Cage edition. This is mostly motivated from hearing the recent changes with automation and all the speculation on what jobs are going to be outsourced due to automation. And you see there was these initial reports where women's jobs were going to be threatened. And they were talking about how all of these positions where it's sort of a low level of technical skill, but a high level of social interaction, those are going to be automated to a much greater extent. And so the women will just be sidelined, and this will be good for men. My position was, first of all, women have something men don't. They have an innate value to them that men do not have. Older boomer men that control these economies, that control these businesses, they want these young women around them. It's like an ego thing for them. Even if they're not getting anything out of these women, they still enjoy their presence. Whereas for men, the only value you have as a young man is that you can provide some kind of material service. You can be productive in some way. So, well, I'm sure that there will be some portion of the jobs being automated for women. The priority is going to be shifted towards automating male jobs as much as possible and preserving female jobs as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree. As we can see in the stats, like, male college graduates have higher unemployment rates than female college graduates. And you're right. Like, I think they're automating a lot of these STEM jobs. I know Cloudtown's talked about his situation, not being able to get a job at all. And he has some experience too. He has his internships. I don't think they're like the best internships, but he wasn't able to get anything at all. And it seems to be a common story I'm hearing with like male STEM graduates these days. I know we have someone in our server who is like a senior developer, not our server, in Medican server, who has talked about it. He's a senior developer, and he says they're really just kind of automating like the lower level away in these tech jobs. But yeah, women are still getting hired as like HR or kind of just easier type business jobs that have more social interaction as part of them, because yeah, these boomer men don't, they'd rather interact with like a lady and her they'd rather interact with a lady of any age, but especially a younger lady, than interact with another dude. So I think this is, yeah, it's just more bad news on that front.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
I mean, look at this. Look at the look at what I just put up. Young male college grads are now jobless at the same rate as non-grads, and look at the difference between men and women in terms of diverging unemployment rates. Women's unemployment rates are going down. Men's unemployment rates are going up. If we're talking about college grads, so
yeah.
there's
Um,
and this indicates to me. Remember, there hasn't been a massive shift in how women uh, pursue education versus men. Like women are still going for the liberal arts shit, and men are still going
oh
primarily
yeah.
for the STEM stuff. But we're seeing a uptick in unemployment for men, but not women. Like this is like you'll see with a lot of like Marxist aligned philosophers and economists. Like I'm thinking Slavoj Zizek comes up to mind. He'll talk about how uh, the capitalists are saying that the future will have, due to efficiency increases thanks to AI and automation, only 20% of humans will be needed. And I'm like, yeah, that may be true, but you need to qualify that a little bit because you're acting as if men and women are interchangeable here. This is a problem Marxists always have, is that they just see men and women as these interchangeable units. They never differentiate. I'm like, no, okay. So what you're saying is 20% of men will be needed. But as far as women are concerned, women have an innate productive value, a reproductive value. Uh, People just prefer interacting with them. So whenever there's going to be a front-facing customer service thing, men and women prefer interacting with women.
Yeah.
Uh, as I said before, like it's these these big businesses, elite institutions, even small businesses, they're always going to be overwhelmingly dominated by men. And these older men, they love having these women around. Um,
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe, I mean, once these older men, and I think they're going to hang on for a while, but once they leave their positions, whether it's, um, going to the other side or just retiring, then you're going to have the middle-aged ladies in those positions, and they're not really going to want to hire dudes either. You know what I mean?
yeah, like they don't want these guys around. Usually, these middle-aged chicks, they'll already have a stick up their ass about men by that age. So, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they'll see the young men as being within their power to abuse. So they will make life difficult for them. Um, like no one's on our side, and it gets worse as time goes on because we're also like if we're talking about how men can change the society, like just average men. What are our options? Hypothetically, just to be clear, I'm not advocating anything specific. I'm saying hypothetically, if a group of young men wanted to have some kind of revolution, what are their options? Well, they have their economic output. They can strike and they can withhold their economic input into the society, or they can engage in like a military campaign and guerrilla warfare, whatever. Those are your options. Okay.
That's not happening. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, let's even
it's just
assume for
not.
the
It's
sake of
just not.
argument, that it is possible to motivate these men to fight a guerrilla campaign. Let's just assume that for the sake of argument. We're reaching a point now where we're starting to see automated weapon systems where you have like these robot dogs that have automated flamethrowers, automated drones that are flying around. I remember reading there was this with the recent school shooting that happened. They're they're talking about putting drones that are armed with weapons patrolling the schools to identify and shoot down any potential school shooters. You know, like the goal behind that, they're not
Yeah,
humanitarians that care about these kids. The
I
goal
think.
is to perfect the technology.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and like more surveillance, more control. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Let's see here. The older ladies also hate younger women dating younger men too. Yeah, that is true. Um, Though typically women, what you see with women is that their preference in men on for age tends to go up with their own age. They tend to track with their own age right up until the 40s, and then they start preferring younger. So it's like up at their age up until the 40s, and then they prefer younger. And then wait, let me just read this from Nero. Mercer, what do you think about Mongols' invasion not leaving a genetic trace in Eastern Europeans despite telescoping? Look, I found that you can't have a conversation about population genetics with these people. Most of them are just completely ignorant. They just don't know anything about it. And if I have a conversation with these guys about this stuff, because I happen to be an archaeogenetics it would just be me lecturing them for like an hour because they just don't know this shit. Now, I'm not saying Tails specifically doesn't know this. I'm talking about this type of people that will adopt these narratives of, the East is all Mongoloidized and the South of Europe is all Negrofied. I'm talking those types of people. Um, you can't
Yeah,
really.
I don't think there's any like real truth to that. I mean,
Well, no,
maybe
like
there's like a
like the
tiny,
the
tiny
highest amount of
inkling,
non-European
maybe, but
admixture you see is like 10% in in southern Italy. It gets to up to like 10, maybe at a stretch 15% if we're talking like Middle Eastern
Calabria
admixture.
or something.
Yeah, like Middle Eastern admixture. Um, and then in Greece you can get maybe around 8% Caucasus admixture. And in if you look at Eastern Europe, you're talking maybe like 1-2% at most East Asian like admixture. I mean, it's just there's you can't these people don't know what they're talking about, so there's no point even having the conversation. Um, they get really emotional about it too. So, anyways, though, that's not really the topic of the discussion. I just wanted to lay that out there. Um, Hang on just a second here.
Um,
Metacan, can you send me a link, a fresh link to the Discord for the call-in section? I know he's listening to the stream.
maybe you can add him or something.
Well, he's listening to the stream. He should be able to. Well, I mean, we're not doing the call-ins right away, so it can be at some point. Anyways, though,
Okay.
so that's the big part is that they're ignoring this major advantage women have in their desirability that's not economic. Whereas for men, it's pure
But
economics. That's the only
what
value
what
they
I
have.
will say is that in positions that are rigorous and demanding, and I mean these are getting automated away, but in the positions that are rigorous and demanding and that suck to work, that aren't boring and that are like really exhausting mentally, from my experience, it's been like 80% dudes. Um, yeah, the women don't really have hard jobs. The women have the jobs that you want to have because they're easy and boring. Um,
Yeah, and the
but
reason why
yeah,
they
I
have
mean,
this.
even I think even if like the hard job still existed, like going back like 3 years or whatever, that's still no. That doesn't give you an ability to beta bucks because women have a means to sustain themselves anyway because they have their easy jobs. Um, so I guess that's kind of like a silver lining is like, hey, like, yeah, our jobs are being automated, but it's not like we can beta bucks anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, Beta Bucks is coming to an end as a strategy. which is a good thing I think in the long
I
run
think,
because it'll force other. This is a good way. The oofy doofy thing was a good way to keep things under wraps, you know. Um, like it gave guys a means of coping. Oh
well,
God,
yeah, it was like an alternative way to acquire a void, but now
yeah.
that's not really around anymore. Um,
Oh hey Tails. Hey listen, I would love to do a conversation on archaeogenetics and genetic composition of Europeans. I've done a lot of shit on this, but that is not the topic of this stream in particular. I just wanted to answer that question, so I'm not really going to be talking about that further. I might talk a little bit about, because I know some of you guys are in the sphere, the white nationalist sphere. There's this stuff going on with this guy named Arval and Return to the Land. And his past has been drudged up, and it was a dirty tricks campaign on behalf of the lady who was part of the tribe who wrote the article. But it is still kind of entertaining. I'm not really invested on either side, but it is kind of funny. It's something I might talk about afterwards.
yeah, but anyway, I was just gonna add that look, like working with ladies is usually not so great. They don't really know what they're doing. They're not authoritative in terms of knowing what to do. They can't like figure things out really. They get like really like nervous, like, oh, I don't know. And then it kind of falls on the man. But they're employed anyway because like the economy isn't like a rational acting system like that. Um,
Yeah, and
Also,
men are going to men are going to take
Mercer, can
care
we
of it.
talk
Like
about
men have an instinct to do that.
outsourcing?
Of course. Just one second, actually. Let's pull this up.
Sorry, I can't see it. What are you pulling up?
H-1B visas soar as U.S. tech workers face mass layoffs.
Yeah. So if you're in the position of like working with these people, it's not going to be a pleasant time. Um, they're very immature, childish. They like yell at you, and if they're in a position to abuse you and like make you do busy work, they will. That's been my experience working with those types of people. Um, they also, yeah, they can't really figure things out either. They're good at like rote tasks and like learning a formula or learning like a predefined process. But if there's like ambiguity and you have to like figure something out, um, they're not so good at that, similar to ladies.
Yeah.
And um, also similar to ladies, like the fact that they have these jobs makes them appear productive economically because hey, like they have these jobs, they're paying these taxes, that graph will show them as a positive physical impact, but it's not showing the impact that it has on people like me who are working with them uh, and having to deal with being yelled at by them
Yeah.
and them not being able to figure anything out or be helpful. And you can't really quantify that as much, um, compared to the tax graph, which you can't quantify more. You can't really quantify the impact that it has on the normal people working with them, like me. um, I remember I had an experience where I had to figure something out, and I was just being yelled at in like a very unprofessional way, like you do that, why you do that, what that. It was very
Yeah.
unprofessional, and yeah, I think if you can avoid working with them, definitely do it. Like try to find like a smaller business that doesn't offshore or doesn't get the visas or whatever.
Yeah.
Especially if it's like a more complicated job, because that's just going to be a hard time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And actually, so Tails wanted to talk about race and IQ. This is actually something we could talk about a little bit. Like, I'm not going to talk directly about the DNA and whatever, and because everybody knows the maps, everybody knows that shit. But here is something that I found interesting because I follow the right wing stuff on Twitter, and there was this tweet went out, and the right wing really crashed out over it because it's obviously they're all Asians, right? Or there's a couple Indians. And it's went to a fancy dinner in San Francisco, and everybody went to Harvard or Stanford. Of course, these are all Asian strivers. And if you go to the quote tweets, what will we see? This is what Ivy Leaguers are supposed to look like, wasps. And they're right, by the way. This is correct. And then this post is generating massive anger and resentment. Disinherited native whites simultaneously selling off the country to cheap foreign labor underclass and a new cohort of parasitic elites to act as the new imperial rulers. Okay, this post actually, there's a little more truth to it. It's I would agree with like 85-90% of that. But what you see is, you see all of these people coping where they're like, oh, they're just good at taking tests. It's all just a cheap cheating way of doing things, whatever. And I'm like, listen, this is not actually like crashing out over Asians out competing whites in the economy is not how you resolve the question. What should be done is you're supposed to say, yes, this is what happens when you allow either a high IQ ethnic group or just a minority of high IQ elites from a much larger ethnic group to migrate in large numbers to your country. They will end up supplanting you and your elite institutions, and those elite institutions then set the standards of discussion and what you can or cannot do or say. Like they're the ones that mint the future elites. So it is in your group's interest to ensure that you remain in control of those institutions. It has nothing to do with whether they're meritocratically superior or not. Like they could be meritocratically superior. They could be perfectly capable of outcompeting. Like I'm sure that there's or like 10 times as many Chinese with an IQ of 130 plus than white Americans with an IQ 130 plus. Let's say hypothetically. That doesn't mean that the white Americans should just give up their institutions to these people because they're more they're able to outcompete them in a market system. It just doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit their group. This is something that really pisses me off about the right wing is that they live in this like universalistic framework where everything has to be either we're the best at everything or we have to seethe about it because we can't just say that, yeah, these people are maybe better than us at this, but it doesn't matter. Like it's irrelevant to our interests. Yeah. This is why I am actually, here's a really hot take. I actually am somewhat Mugabe pilled. I actually like Mugabe and Idi Amin to some extent because this is how they thought. They didn't really give a shit that Indians or whites or whatever were able to perform better in running the state or whatever. They were interested in securing power for their group. They were like, listen, Mugabe was like, listen, I am a Shona nationalist. I want the Shona tribe to dominate Zimbabwe. We're going to go and massacre the Ndabeles, this other tribe over here. And then we're going to, I mean, he ran into issues afterwards because he actually wanted to keep the white farmers there. He didn't want to fuck with them at first. He ended up running out of resources to bribe his own tribe with, and he had to start expropriating farms. But I mean, that attitude is a good attitude. I agree with it. Idi Amin was like, "Fuck these Indians that are in Uganda. They're taking over our society. We're just gonna kick them all out." It's perfectly reasonable to me. Perfectly reasonable. You know, every group should have that attitude towards outsiders. You know, and
Yeah.
and this just makes right wingers look really petty. You know, um, yeah, like this guy here, Hirohito is probably Japanese or Asian guy. Probably not Japanese because a lot of Asians will LARP as Japanese because Japanese are high status. Whites say affirmative action is unnecessary because blacks underachieve academically due to their low IQ, not racism, yet now they want affirmative action for themselves because higher IQ Asians are outperforming them. And the answer is yes. Meritocracy should only apply within your own group. That is the only place meritocracy should apply. You should be privileging your group above outside groups in every other context. No, that was
Yeah,
a
I
bit of a
mean,
pet peeve for this. Like I just, as soon as I saw this, and I knew, because I know right wingers will seethe about this shit, and it just makes them look so stupid and petty. Like this is such bad optics.
but like, why would they even want to like come to Harvard anyway? Like, why not like something from their own? You know what I'm saying?
Because they want to take over the United States as a financial center. Like America is, whoever controls North America controls the world. Um, like America, due to its strategic position, due to its enormous natural resource wealth, due to its enormous landmass, anyone that controls this continent will have enormous power projection across the entire world. You know, this is why I find it kind of funny that Americans think their system allowed them to become so successful. It was like the institutions were just so perfect, and it's like, no, you like almost virtually any system could have succeeded in America so long as the population was of sufficient quality and sophistication. You know, any government system could have succeeded in America. Well, no, Tails, I'm taking a consistent position here. I'm saying when Idi Amin rounded up and expelled the Indians because they were dominating Ugandan economy and Ugandan society, he did a good thing for his people. I'm saying that's a good thing. And I'm saying by that context, I agree with him. Like that's what you should do for your people. Like for example, let me give you an example. Okay, I talked about how I thought Mugabe was pretty based for his own people. If I existed at that time, I would be on the Rhodesian side because they're my people. They're English. So I would still side with the Rhodesians just due to siding with my own people. Even if I agree ideologically with what Mugabe is doing for his own people, I would still see it as my people versus their people. Am I right wing? Honestly, I wouldn't say I'm right wing. I would say I'm more like a third positionist. Because I'm really not a conservative. I'm not a big fan of fetishizing hierarchies. I think you see a lot of problems with, like, the reason why conservatives can't do anything, they always lose, is because they're always obsessed with maintaining hierarchies. You know, whereas the left is all about overthrowing the hierarchies. Now, they usually set up something even worse in its place, but they still overthrow the hierarchy. Like, that's what happened in Iran. The radical leftists and liberals overthrew the Shah's government. The Ayatollah faction was an important
All right, Mercer,
faction.
I'm gonna have to hop off.
All right, see you later.
Do you have any questions real quick?
I don't really have anything else to add.
Yeah, I guess just for me to sum up, certain people can really suck to work with, and overall, though, I do want to say that I don't think the economy, at least in the U.S., is as bad as the dating market. Like I don't think it's quite a fair comparison. Like I was talking about it with my parents, and I was like, you know, there are different needs in the job market than the dating market. Like the dating market's more just objective, like
well, the
if
dating
you're
market
good
can
enough or
expand,
not.
or
I
the
think
job market, the economy can expand and contract pretty rapidly. The dating market, that only happens with physical demographic changes. So the dating market in that regard is much more restricted in terms of how supply versus demand works. But the market function of it is still the same. It's still a market function.
right, but I'm saying the market's not nearly as bad. The job market, at least in the U.S., it's not nearly as bad as the dating market. So I don't think it's fair to do a comparison. And yeah, if you can, like, try to find some. Sorry, I have to be outside, so I'm not going to be on much longer. But
Yeah, no problem.
if you can, try to find a job. Could you hear me, or is the background noise just unbearable?
No, I can hear you. It's fine.
Okay, is the chat saying anything?
Yeah, they're saying entry-level white-collar jobs are very brutal. other sectors of the job market less bad.
I think entry level white collar jobs can be brutal, but if they're like a dead end type, they're not as brutal. And go for that. Go for something that's, even if it's like a dead end. Like don't go for like investment banking, um, or something like that, or like something high up in finance. Try to find something like clerical and make between like 40 and 60,000 a year, and live with your parents as long as possible to save money.
Yeah.
And don't try to be a big baller. And yeah, I'm out.
All right. See you later. So what are we saying here? Tails, you said you were right wing in your video. Yeah, I was saying that with regards to liberalism. I am anti-liberal. That's my position. But if we're talking about the right wing, as in, am I a conservative or a traditionalist? No, I'm much more utilitarian when it comes to that sort of thing. I'm not really someone who believes traditions are good in and of themselves. I'm like, okay, is this tradition going to benefit the population? Is it going to benefit the people or not? That's my concern. But yeah, as far as Canada goes, like Canada's situation is really bad. Like, and I would say that we're maybe 10, 15 years ahead of the US in this regard.
Wait,
We're
Mercer, before you
What's up?
with Canada, sorry, can I just say something about the picture
Yeah,
over
sure.
here? Well, if you can just go back to it.
Yeah, you can say what you want.
Whatever. I just thought it'd be more interesting. The Twitter posts were there. First of all, to these conservatives in particular, does it not occur to them that a woman wouldn't really like a man so much for what job he works anyway? Like, regardless of whoever was sitting on the right, whether it be the Asians themselves or any conservative that actually managed to get a high-paying job, like, does it really not occur to these people that it does really not occur to them that women don't really see you working a really high-paying job or you having high status as the number one marker of attraction, but more so your genetics and facial bones?
Yeah. Let me just quickly introduce you because I forgot to. So, if you guys have ever watched the Thomas White stream, this is Whispercell. He's known for whispering when he calls in. He's
Unfortunately, I'm going to get in massive trouble if anyone listens to me.
No, yeah, don't worry about it. I understand that. It's become kind of it's not like a bad thing. It's just what you're known for.
No.
So yeah, he's decided to come on and talk about this stuff, which is great. As far as that goes, you're right. That is true. But it's more like the looks are a necessity, but they also want the social status that comes with job security and a high-paying career for the guy. Like what you see for women is that they will oftentimes, this is something I think Tails actually. This is something you commented on my video about. You were like, when I said women exclude categorically men that make less than them and that are less educated than them, and you said that's not a categorical thing. And I'm like, no, it's not necessarily categorical. Like, it's not like there's no cases. I have cases in my family of my sisters making more than their husbands. But A, this is a relatively rare phenomenon, and B, if you look at the stability of those marriages, it's way less stable than the reverse. The natural way of doing it is that the man is higher status, the man has a higher income, and is either at par in education or better educated. And you especially see this selectiveness when it comes to education as you go up the education ladder. This is why fertility for educated women tends to drop off a cliff as they get higher and higher education. Because their standards, their minimum requirements for education becomes more and more extreme.
More and more extreme, you said?
Yeah.
I think you cut out.
Yeah, like their minimum requirements. So like, for example, if a woman has a PhD, even if it's like in English literature or something, she's going to expect a guy who's probably at least has a master's. Like she's going to have much stricter requirements when it comes to education. And this is just the psychology of women. This is why women think that their educations are attractive to men when they're not, you know? But it's all a status thing. And if you're one of these elite men, this benefits you because this increases the supply of these women relative to the men.
Got it. As far as the general playing field of a lot of this goes, women usually, it's no mistake that, but by this point, that women would go for anyone who seems to have good genetics, and the more likely someone has good genetics, the more willing they're willing to go out with them. People that are more guys that are more genetically fit are more likely to easily get good education, not necessarily not only through nepotism, but also being able to get their own decent standing in whatever sort of high prestige education that they have. Generally speaking, yeah, they're just gonna go. They're just gonna go for anyone who seems to have good genetics.
Well, they'll sleep with them. They'll sleep with them, but they won't marry them and they won't have kids with them. And that's fundamentally what matters. That's what determines what the next generation is who they reproduce with.
Yeah, I got it.
And if we look at who they reproduce with, this is a huge issue. There are some countries that have managed to mitigate this a lot, and that would be like Sweden, for example. Sweden was able to reduce, because there's a negative correlation between total fertility rate and education pretty much everywhere for women, except in a few countries like the northern Protestant countries in Europe, and Sweden would be one of the biggest examples of this. Is they've managed to almost eliminate the fertility gap, but they did this through extremely aggressive economic policies where they would have like free daycare. They would make it super easy for women to pawn off their kids to the state to raise them while they work full time. So I would say it's not a long-term solution because you end up with these screwed up kids that are being raised in daycares, but it still does resolve that one problem of dysgenics happening, like first order dysgenics.
Mm.
Yeah, invite Steve. If Steve Hoka wants to hop in the chat, I'll definitely bring him in. I'd love to have him talk because he's great for this sort of stuff.
Well, to say this, Steve Holka just seems like one of those boomer teachers that would have told everyone to show their faces on Zoom during the lockdowns.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people that would disagree with him on many things. I don't agree with him on everything, but we could have an interesting conversation. We had a long one in the past, so. But I'm pretty good at talking to people, even people I disagree with.
It's weird. It's very unnecessary, but also hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, and by the way, this is what I just put on here. These numbers, these are TFR versus education, years of education correlations. So for the women, you can see that it's universally quite low. The correlations are negative. For the men, it's much less uniform. So in a lot of cases for men, like for example, Sweden, Switzerland, it's actually positive correlation between education and fertility.
What's with the red square that you? What's with the particular thing that you squared in red?
That's Sweden. So this is the fertility correlation. It's negative 0.004, which is effectively non-existent. And the positive correlation between fertility and education for men outweighs it. So actually in Sweden now, they actually have, at least if you use education as a proxy, they have eugenic fertility.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marvin Goldberg's videos. Oh, hey, Little Broomstick. Pink collar jobs are on the out as we enter. I'm speculative. On that because, or rather not speculative. I am speculative, but I'm kind of suspicious of that. Because as long as, like what we're going to see with these AI productivity increases, we're going to see more resources being allocated based on preference than based on efficiency, because we're going to be able to, we already have an oversupply of labor relative to what's demanded. You know, this is why wages are so low. This is why the job market is so horribly competitive. What you're going to see with the increasing productivity in AI is that they're going to be able to move resources around that were freed up from having to pay productive male employees. They can then move them elsewhere. You know, and some of them, yeah, like they might lose some of these jobs, but I have a feeling that they're going to be a lot more resilient than people think.
I think
Yeah,
you
trouble
cut out.
mind. Education would be years of education. So if you have 12 years of education, that means you've gone from kindergarten to, or like grade 1 to grade 12. And then if you have 16 years of education, it means you have a bachelor's degree effectively. Or 18 years of education, you have a master's degree. And so that's how they determine these correlations. And yeah, Nero, it's not a perfect comparison. So we don't have the actual numbers on Swedes, but given that the numbers generally for non-Europeans are highly negative for women in terms of the relationship between education and fertility, odds are this actually understates it. Swedish women might even be a little better off in that regard. But, you know, the trade-off is that you have a country dominated by women and dominated by girl bosses. So it's like, well, is that worth it? I don't know.
I wonder if it's a white woman, really.
Yeah. Is AI just hype? AI is hype in the sense that if people think that AI is going to completely replace entire sectors of the economy, that's not true. What is going to happen is that it's going to increase the productivity in the economy. So there are already guys that I've talked to. A regular in our circles is named Rawlix. He's a senior software developer. He's told me that with the introduction of AI into his workplace, he's been able to automate about 80% of the work that would have been done by junior devs in the past. So like quality control testing or bug testing, that sort of stuff. The stuff that you would have, the jobs that you would have given to junior devs so that they could develop their skills, you know, the more routine stuff. That's being eliminated. And what people don't realize is that when you eliminate these sections of the economy or these sections of the job requirement, well, the labor that gets freed up there has to be shifted somewhere else. So even if there are junior dev roles that can never be outsourced or can never be eliminated, there's going to be a far less of a need for the number of developers relative to what we have now, because they'll just only be focused in this one section, you know?
Mercer, I have a question regarding the socioeconomic landscape regarding
Sure.
wage slavery. So it's no mistake that the socioeconomic landscape is completely different, and there's all sorts of different regulations have effectively made guys useless as well. I remember watching a rehab room video. I'm going to try not to bring up whatever rehab room videos I watched, since some of my thoughts were more original than that, but he said in his NEAT video where he was talking about rising NEAT levels for men in the UK, well, which also contrasts the complete and utter stagnation of women being NEATs to the point where there almost are no women that are NEAT. He says that there's two aspects to properly change the socioeconomic landscape so it could be more tolerable for oofy doofies, and in turn, conversely, have other people tolerate oofy doofies as well. One aspect is to look into the regulations themselves, which he claimed weren't really feasible. But if you were to do this, you need to look into different costs, how managers were running certain procedures and certain activities. But the other aspect was what would motivate these guys to want to go ahead and work? What exactly would want to motivate them to be working?
Well, yeah, that's a huge factor. And this is what we were talking about before the stream. we were discussing why girls tend to do so much better than boys in education. And it's because of conscientiousness. Girls are just more conscientious than boys. And what that means is people misunderstand conscientiousness and think it's just a good thing. It's just like a universally good trait. It's like a good goy trait. But in reality, it just means your vulnerability to the pressure, conforming to the expectations of the society around you and the people around you. That's really what it means. So women are much more likely to want to please the people around them and to meet the expectations that are put on them. The motivation for boys is much more self-directed. If you want boys to do something, they have to be intrinsically motivated. You can't motivate them by saying, you'll be really popular if you do this. Like everyone will like you if you do this. That works on girls. It's not work on boys. Now,
There's a big
yeah,
issue with
what's that now?
being self-interested. No, there's a big issue with guys being self-interested. Um, what I've realized, and this is something I realized since a couple weeks ago, guys are, well, not necessarily every single one of them, but a lot of guys have a tendency to cope, and it's really just in their human nature. I was thinking, let's say you wanted to be an entrepreneur or learn how to weld. Maybe you want to try learning a new language or whatever. It's often first of all, it's often very hard to do so because you need to have the proper motor skills down. You need to not only know the ins and outs, but you need to have basic motor skills in order to do certain things. Um, even barring motor skills, when you can't really make your own sort of entertainment, you can't really help but rely on other people's entertainment, which in of itself is a form of cope because you can't actually finish your own goals.
Yeah, no, conscientiousness is about meeting the needs of society. It's people that are low in conscientiousness, yes, they do tend to be disorganized, but they also tend to have very little interest in how they're perceived by others. They have no real concern for how they're perceived by others. You can be agreeable and very low in conscientiousness, meaning you could be very easy to get along with and not want to like try and emphasize harmony in your interpersonal relationships, but then also not care how you're perceived in terms of status by the wider society.
I mean, you may
Maybe I'm
not necessarily.
misunderstanding it, but that's my understanding. Is that girls, they tend to be more concerned about meeting the expectations of that are set on them. Whereas for boys, like I remember growing up, I didn't really care that much, other than if my dad was mad at me, pretty much. Uh, what a difference for boys is that if one of the ways that you could motivate them intrinsically is by giving them a team to fight for. You this would be like this is a pet peeve of mine, by the way, where you'll hear people say, if you talk about like the achievements of France or the achievements of England, and you talk about like the French people, the English people, this is the civilization that these nations created, these people created. You'll have people turn around and say, you haven't done anything personally. You're just talking about your ancestors because you have nothing to show for yourself. It's like, well, first of all, if you were to go to any of these famous people, whether it's like Isaac Newton for the English, Leibniz for the Germans, Descartes for the French, if you were to go to these guys and ask them, would you like to be identified as representing your nation, as like one of the pinnacles of your nation? Do you think they would say, no, I'm an individual, I don't represent my nation? Of course not. They would say, absolutely, I would be honored to, like Isaac Newton would say, I would be honored to be considered an exemplary Englishman, or a pillar of English civilization or English identity. You know what I mean? Like, so that's
This would be
bullshit to
the
start with.
this
But
would be the
but
reaction,
even then,
but
like, this is one of the major motivators of the scientific revolution that happened in the 19th century, was international competition between these European nations for prestige and for becoming the foremost technological power, the foremost intellectual power in the region. Like it was national fervor that really pushed that. Well, we don't have that anymore. We're not even allowed to identify with our nations. So we start off as these individuals that aren't attached to anything, and then we're surprised when boys, even the very intelligent boys, feel no motivation to really do anything, because it's like, who are they? Most people are not naturally highly ambitious and like highly power hungry. Most people are just want to live a comfortable life, relatively speaking. If you want people to achieve to their full ability, if you want boys to achieve to their full ability, you have to motivate them through means other than just appealing to their base self-interest. And yeah, this is what I think is happening. This is why boys are collapsing in their achievement.
Them wanting to represent their nation is a natural response. However, you may have guys that have interests of their own. Like they may have goals in of themselves. And it wouldn't necessarily be a goal that would end up making them money in the long term, but it could really be more or less of a natural need.
Yeah. Oh, just Hudson Black is saying, are you equivocating conformism and conscientious? Look, I don't know. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. Like I'm not married to using one term or the. I may be incorrectly using it. I'm just saying. Like you understand what I'm saying though. Like that, what I'm describing, the process I'm describing, where women are more sensitive to the expectations of their social circle, the community that they're a part of, like the social hierarchy they're within. Boys are less sensitive to that, and this is one of the main reasons why girls tend to submit to the pressure to succeed more than boys do.
I also wanted to make another point regarding the second aspect of motivating oofy doofies to work. I think way back when, a lot of oofy doofies would actually have different motivations for wanting to work anyway. Though naturally, people are just prone to wanting to be comfortable at the very least.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, I gotta mention, what do you think about the U.S. child support law change? I don't know. What do you mean? What change was there? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I haven't heard of it. I'll wait for him to reply there. I don't know if because I don't remember hearing anything about that. I mean, the U.S. has some of the worst child support laws in the world, I think, actually. So it could probably only be a positive change, right? I don't think it could get much worse. Like even Europe, even Sweden, I think has better child support laws than the U.S. Like the U.S. still has alimony laws and default female custody, whereas Sweden has joint custody as the default, and they're a lot more even-handed when it comes to child support.
In the most
Ironically.
general sense of the word, a lot of oofy doofies often would find positive things to say or compliment about whatever it is that they have to interact with, whether it be a job or a person.
Yeah.
However, the dark side tend to come out not necessarily from the oofy doofies, but from whatever it is that they're interacting with, and it could also be because of them being utterly lazy. For one, well, laziness is just one reason. It's not really one of the biggest out there. Um, it mostly has to do with the fact that they are too much in their comfort zone as opposed to them willing to branch out to other things. First of all, there isn't really much of a conveyed idea as to what they should be branching out into. I mean, and you do have some things that you could be branching out into that are utterly dangerous. Second of all, you do have a chance for these movie doofies to be mostly isolated, and by result of them not really conforming to whatever it is that they're interacting with. So they just get sent out outright. And of course they can't help but feel angered regarding
Yeah. And by the way, actually, this is something else I wanted to talk about here. This is why I brought this over to the Twitter, even though I didn't mention it until now. So this guy Lei Gong, he explains here something that's important, and nobody understood him when he made this thread. He basically So everywhere in the world, young adults are uncertain if they can maintain a job and decent lifestyles long term, as they're constantly reminded their livelihood is provisional to the market and finance, and you expect them to think about kids. So what he's talking about here, and here's the kicker, here's the good part. Young adults today live much better lives than farmers, but farmers had much more certainty about what they could support in their future than young adults today. Kids are a 20-year investment. Do you expect people to make 20-year investments when they live unsure of the next 3 to 5? And then everybody was talking about, in the comments, they were like, "What? Yeah, but the quality of life is way higher. Look at the cost of food has gone down, the cost of this and that." And it's like, no, you don't understand. It's not the static living conditions that matter. It's the instability of it. That's what actually matters. And think about it this way. If you look at generations before the baby boomers, how much radical changes in their society and like how their economy functioned were there? Like the Industrial Revolution was a huge change, but that occurred over the process of like 100 years between, I'd say, the 1830s, like when it really started to kick off, the 1830s to like the 1920s. In Britain, for example. And there were huge social problems with the rise of industrialism. But even then, it was a gradual process compared to, just compare our lives to 40 years ago. Don't even go back 100 years, go back 40 years. That's 1980s compared to now, 1985 compared to today. Look at how radically different life is. Like what you're seeing this these changes in the economy and these changes in the social norms. You're seeing them accelerate to the point where like there's no sense of stability anymore, and this creates this intense uncertainty about the future. We don't know where the future's heading now with AI, for example. Like we're talking about AI in this live stream. Why would you want kids in that situation?
You know what else these guys could be provisional to? Worrying about their epigenetics or their genetics.
Well, I doubt they're thinking much about that.
Well, it could be much of a possibility for others. It's kind of what I've been thinking about. And not only that, but like, I don't know, in my particular case with my particular situation, I said some things that really had people like I got basically sent away from friend groups for me saying different things ended up being either very incorrect regarding liberal information or flat out harboring against it. And by result, I just always felt like I could never really be forgiven for it. Like I'd have to live a lifestyle, not a lifestyle, a life where I have to in some way or another atone for my mistakes before I can not only get a girlfriend, but do something good for, I guess those guys in particular. Not that I'm, first of all, not that I'm willing to completely serve them for life, ride or die. That's not what I'm getting at here. But yeah, like, these guys could be provisional to things that they at the very least feel they may not really be forgiven for. And speaking of forgiveness, they may not really be forgiven for, not really forgiven in any sort of moral light, but they, like, if they don't really have the proper funds, if they don't, it's sort of like, whatchamacallit. Can you scroll up to the post, please? The very first comment.
Which one are we talking about right now?
The very first post.
The fertility crisis is not that mysterious. Everywhere in the world, young adults are uncertain they can maintain a job. Like, is that what you're...
Yeah, they had a provisional by the lessons.
Yeah, now here's something to think about. Okay?
It's market and finance.
The Industrial Revolution introduced such an enormous uproar due to, like, it uprooted millions of people because it made entire ways of life obsolete. Like the vast majority of people before the Industrial Revolution, including in the most educated parts of Europe, were peasant farmers. Like literacy was not that widespread. I mean, it was like 50-50, I think, in the most literate parts of Europe by the time the Industrial Revolution hit. It wasn't that common though. Like it wasn't universal rather. What you saw was because the peasants became outmoded as their way of living became obsolete. You had the state had to figure out some way of employing these people, and what they found was if you create public education systems and you maximize the cognitive potential of your population, you are then able to avoid this problem somewhat, because then you can train your population to do more cognitively demanding stuff than just peasant work, you know. So this is how we were able to escape the massive collapse in the value of labor with the first industrial revolution. We were able to take advantage of our cognitive potential. We were able to push people into these much more high-skilled careers through educating them as children upwards. We don't have that option now because we've already used that. That was the first industrial revolution, and now we're in a position where we don't have another area of human potential that we can tap into and maximize efficiently. We're in a situation where it's just a zero-sum game. If we eliminate these jobs, or we make these jobs so much more efficient through productivity gains with AI and automation, we're just going to have a permanently underemployed class that you have to do something with. You know?
What he said about making decisions about kids on long-term life support expectations and not long-term production expectations, that's also the main crux of the issue regarding how the world could work, like how people can properly wage slave without it having to feel like any sort of slavery at all or any sort of indentured servitude. But really indentured servitude that goes on for so many different years that it practically kills off your life and replaces your life with a newer one.
Oh wait, what are we talking about? Like non-efficient ways of running the economy? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Yeah, non-efficient ways of running the economy.
I mean, yeah, that's what I would do. That's how I would do it. I would just, because like, what's the point of efficiency if it leads to, because look, the whole purpose of your society should be to grow your population and make sure, of course, in a healthy way. You want to make sure that good quality people are reproducing, but you want to grow your population and fill out the borders of your country so that you have you're utilizing the resources in your country, and then maybe expand and do other things like doing cool shit like maybe colonizing Mars, you know, mining the asteroid belt while terraforming Mars, like really cool sci-fi stuff. You can achieve that, like as long as you can meet the standard of living that is satisfactory and happy for most people, and that they can live to their natural lifespans, they get all their needs met. You don't really need more efficiency beyond that. You know, at that point, then any increases in efficiency should really go towards reducing the amount of work that has to be done, so that you can give people more time to have social lives and create families, etc. But because we live in this economic maximalist system, we actually have the opposite incentives. The incentive.
Well, I think.
What's that?
Oh, sorry. Before you begin, you continue. I think that there's a pretty huge extent for how inefficient you can be in terms of trying to get to whatever goal you need to get to or want to get to. That's really effective. The inefficiency, it can cause people to live lifestyles that are less healthier than whatever lifestyles before, and this could also contribute to the problem, to any sort of whatchamacallit, problems as to why wage slaving feels less like genuine labor and more like slavery.
Yeah, AI. There were issues in the first stream I did where people were talking about Hamoudi and words that were used actually brought the whole stream down. So I had to actually go in and manually censor certain words just because of, it's really stupid. I wish I didn't have to do that, but unfortunately I do. So if you can just word things in a way, you know, um,
Wait,
if you're trying to say something, you just have to word things in a clever way. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't like this, but yeah. And yeah, this is another thing. Like, if we're talking about family creation from a purely economic rationalist perspective, families are extremely inefficient. Like, that's an extremely inefficient use of resources. You know, like, imagine if you consider how much resources go into taking care of a child from birth until 18, that money could be pumped directly into the economy instead of being wasted on these kids. Now I'm talking from their perspective. And not only that, but you'll have these parents start to do things like save in advance, like for 20 years down the line, for their children's education instead of spending that money right away. This is a market failure from their point of view. From the market's point of view, you want to maximize the consumption of the individuals that are in the economy, and then you can just bring in immigrants to replace them when they are no longer able to support themselves. When they're no longer able to produce and consume, that's when you bring in the immigrants. Like, this whole market system is directly opposed to normal human society. You can't have a human society functioning along these market maximalist lines. But this is where we're at. Like, this is how all of our countries are run.
it's especially morbid, seeing as to how most of these immigrants seem more valuable than the vast majority of refugees in the U.S. today, especially from India. And even compliments the post that you have on here. I mean, firing an employee because he needs to be a father. I mean, maybe he could have. Push comes to a shove. Maybe he could have tried to get some sort of a. Well, that is part of that. That should be part of the paternity leave, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, like the dude is gonna be a father of some kids. Like, this is a proud moment for him. At least be somewhat neutral or cordial about it. You
Well,
don't
no,
really need to.
this isn't efficient from a market perspective. And the market is what matters. And the thing is, I'm not coming at this from, like, I'm not doing the whole communist thing where I condemn the markets as morally evil just for being what they are. They're just a mechanism. It's like, it would be like saying that a cat that kills and eats a mouse is evil for killing and eating the mouse. And it's like, no, it's just acting according to its nature. Like, markets are designed to be this, it's like a Darwinian mechanism to maximize efficiency. And that is great when it's in the right context. It's when it goes in the wrong context, when it escapes where its boundaries should be, and it starts injecting itself into other things, that we run into problems. And this is what we're at now. Like, Americans, for example, Zoltan was talking about how he is basically an outsourced worker in, I don't know if you're in software or not, or something along those lines, but this is very common. Like, European education, high quality. European workers tend to be good, and they're far cheaper. They're far cheaper than Americans. Oftentimes, the education can even be free in Europe, and the quality is good. So why would you, as an employer in America, hire a fresh graduate from the U.S. who has maybe minimum like $80,000, maybe $60,000 in debt for his degree in computer science that he needs to pay off, and you're living in one of the highest cost areas in the country if you're in Silicon Valley. So the pay is going to have to be very high in order for him to both pay his loan off and also just live there. Or you could outsource to Europe, where the cost of living is far, far lower. Quality is just as good, or at least close to it. And once they reach a certain level of competency, they can just import these guys in on H-1Bs. Why not? Because, like, okay, Zoltan, I don't know, let's just assume Zoltan is the software engineer, and he's like a junior developer, and he's working for 5 years for this company in an outsourced position, and then he reaches a level of competency where he can call himself a senior developer. Well, then he can then apply for senior developer roles in American companies and get an H-1B, and they'll bring him over. Because then, once you're a senior developer, then you can justify the wages that Americans pay, because that's when the expertise meets the wage floor. It's when the expertise is below that floor, that's when the outsourcing is preferred. And they'll all do that unless you physically stop them. You know, just to bring it back to Drawlix, another thing that he mentioned to me is most of his coworkers are Canadians. Because Canada is right across the border. We are in this mostly the same time zones. Like, we are in the same time zones. And our education system is equivalent to a good state school in the U.S. on average, I would say, and it's a lot cheaper too. And our wages are way lower. So naturally, of course, you're going to hire these developers. Yeah, I mean, some of these are satire. I just like some of them. They're pretty funny, but sometimes you can't tell though. It's one of those things. What's it called? Godwin's law or something, where you can't tell if it's a satire of something or the real thing. I've seen weird shit like that.
I'm not even sure if it would primarily even matter. I mean, this kind of reflects a relatively serious issue. Maybe it doesn't really seem like the guy that he fired was doing doing much of a good job anyway, but for anyone else, like if this were to actually be real, because in some cases you do have, like in some cases there really is stuff like this where it's an actual reality, and not even just with work. I'm talking about like my things like with breakups and not getting a woman and other stuff like it. But assuming like if this were with someone else who was doing a moderate amount of work and he's always been on time, never really been late. Not only would this be practically unnecessary, but Mercer, you brought up how like cats tend to kill mice because that's really just in their human nature. And you kind of would think that these people are supposed to be similar to one another, but really, in the most figurative sense of the word, due to the degradation affecting certain types of people, and usually predominantly, in this case, mostly white people, although it's really not so much for a racial thing, you have a new off-breed that's essentially a new race of human beings known as Oofy Doofies. And this isn't even something that I really want to defend or even try to. It's just like Oofy Doofies really need to
When you
be
say there's a new breed, are you talking like Homo sapiens, like soy maximus or something? I don't know. I'm not sure I understand.
No, not to that extent, but like Oofy Doofies are a race into themselves. Is my point.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it remains to be seen. Birth rates are only trending downwards, and countries like the US, people I don't think realize, because when you combine birth rates with mixing out rates, especially in the states that have a lot of Hispanics, because there's not much of a division between whites and Hispanics once you get rid of the language barrier, you're going to see the whites disappear really fast demographically. They're going to dissolve really fast.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah, America is going to become Hispanicized very quickly, demographically, more quickly than people realize. It remains to be seen what that will result in, but it's inevitably going to happen. So as far as that goes, like, we're going to see a major paradigm shift. I don't know if it's going to be cultural or just cultural, or if it's also going to be like the biological psychology of the people, whatever, I don't know. But it is going to be a huge change, and it's going to be very fast.
When this would be? Like in 2 years?
Let me see if I can find, actually, because I remember doing this. There's this great resource I've talked about before called the CDC Wonder Tool. And it gives you data on births for various different... you can like specify by the state, you can specify by the year, you can really quantify the characteristics of the races. And what you see is in states like California and Texas, you see a mixing rate of like 20-25% for whites. And you see the the birth rate is like 1.3 or something, or 1.4 in California. I think it's closer to like 1.5 or 6 in Texas. And when you combine that, let's just do a bit of back of the paper, back of the cloth math, whatever they call it. So if you have 10,000 people, and you start with a population of 10,000, and you have a birth rate of 1.5, that means the next generation will be 75% the size of the generation that came before it. Okay, so that's zero. So you multiply by 0.75. That means you're going to have 7,500 people in the next generation. Now, if you also consider that there's a mixing out rate of 25%, if we're looking at California, you then have to do another 75%. So you have to multiply that by 0.75. And so from 10,000, within one generation, you're already down to 5,625 unmixed whites. That's a single generation. Like these changes can happen really rapidly. We'll see how it ends up. It could actually be a good thing, because the biggest problem with America is that they have this black-white obsession. Like they can't get past it, where the blacks and the whites are constantly in this moral struggle for America, whereas Hispanics are just sort of sitting outside of that.
I must admit, I got this from a particular MGTOW stream, but
Yeah.
I think at some point in the future, America's mostly going to become a monopoly for boomers and
For boomers?
boomers and something else. Yeah, I would have mentioned it, but
Well,
you
boomers
would
aren't
have
going
had
to
the
last
issue.
forever. I mean, and the thing is, boomers are going to take everything out with them. Boomers are going to
Just boomers,
they're going to
but
have they're going to ensure that they last as long as they possibly can, which will mean massively increasing costs for medical care. They're gonna squeeze out another 10 years of survival, and they're gonna use all of their savings, like everything that would have gone to their kids. They're gonna use it up, unless the government
sorry,
directly intervenes and stops them. That's what's gonna happen.
sorry. I think you cut out. What was it?
Well,
You cut out.
I was saying, baby boomers are going to use up whatever wealth is left on their way out. They're like they may last another 10 years, or I would say like they'll last maybe into their 80s on average, but they're going to ensure that every penny that can be spent on healthcare is spent on healthcare on them. They're going to make sure that they take everything out with them.
Yeah, not only are these guys trying to relive the glory days, but um, I must admit, before actually being in these spaces, I kind of did have a soft spot for some boomers. Not all of them, but like some of the more heartfelt ones. In the future, we're not really going to be having much of that sort of quote unquote heartfelt energy, which at best has been more or less monopolized by other people only really just getting a paycheck so they can live whatever good lives that they have themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also just for context of how the boomers grew up, um, a lot of these guys, they grew up after World War II. Well, World War II was all about like collective narratives versus the liberal individualists, basically. So you had like the liberal individualist America versus the Soviet Union was sort of an ally with the Nazis, but then after the Cold War, it was no longer an ally. And
Hmm.
then you have the National Socialists and the Fascists, who were the other collectivists, who were the big bad guys. They were the big evil of that entire era. So that what the boomers learned from both the atrocities that were said to be committed by the Axis powers in World War II, and also the atrocities committed by the communists in the throughout their history, pretty much. The boomers learned that all collective narratives, anything above and beyond yourself, is basically a scam. Like the only thing that matters is yourself, because everyone else is out for themselves. You should only be focused on the individual. Like that's the lesson boomers learned from that. and they internalized it deeply.
Yeah.
Zoltan, new stream with Thomas White. Yeah, I'd do a stream with Thomas White. Of course.
Do you, do
Oh,
you
hey,
think there could
Thomas
be
is
a
in there. Oh, hey, what's going on? Yeah,
anyway, do you
I
think that
wanted to hop in on your stream earlier, but I just didn't have the time. Unfortunately, I was a little busy at the time. But I did want to get in there and talk a little bit about some of the stuff you guys were discussing. You know, even though I don't agree with you guys and everything, it's nice that we can talk without having to shit on each other. You know, it's really nice.
I, I would have joined, but I felt too slumped. I guess it must have been some of the wage slaving.
Yeah, that is true.
I don't really think that there would be a pattern of people liking boomers or anyone adjacent to them because I don't really know who could even replicate that sort of,
Well, they can't.
well, the quote-unquote energy that they have. But this does actually need to be, like, there does need to be a lesson taught about the boomers. Now, you can't really, well, first of all, you shouldn't really be trying to spend so much money just to relive the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shouldn't
Well,
really.
the boomers created this entire identity around fetishizing their youth. You know, that was really the most notable thing about them is that as a demographic, they were just so large that they could force their way on everyone else, including everyone older than them. And that was historically not the case. So, as a result, actually, here, I'll show you. Hold on.
Also, not to mention, but another lesson that should be taught, stuff like this can very easily be exploited. It could even be exploited by some of the more higher up elites. How should I say this? It could even be exploited by some of the more higher up elites who just want to regulate society
No, for their
to.
benefit. For their benefit. That's the thing. And yeah,
Yeah.
if you look at the boomer bulge here, you can see there's this huge bulge at the bottom. Like, and this is 1965. So these guys then, once they hit the age of majority, they were the largest single cohort. They could get whatever they wanted. And so their identity became centered around their youth. And like they used to say, don't trust anyone over 35, that sort of shit. Well, what happens when you fetishize your youth and you throw out all other like social conventions that allowed people to age gracefully into these new social roles that used to exist? What do you get? You get people that are no longer young and they're angry and resentful that they're not young anymore, and they resent the young people that are around now. Like you especially see this with baby boomer men versus the younger generations of men. I think you saw a lot of this resentment with Gen X against Gen X in like the 90s and 2000s. Like they were always shitting on Gen X for being not caring about social issues, and they would always shit on their music. It's like the reason why they were doing that is because they were becoming aware that they were aging. It's real bullshit. And now they're in a situation where they've normalized this youth fetishization. And now these boomers and Gen Xers in general, like these older men, are in positions of economic power. And one of the ways they make themselves feel young is they surround themselves with these young women as captive audiences. Because, you know, if they're getting paid in a job to work at this place with this guy as their boss, and they have to suck up to their boss, you know, sometimes literally, well, that's a captive audience.
Wait, Mercer, who do they surround themselves with?
Young women.
I apologize.
Young women.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
You just cut out. That's why.
Yeah. They surround themselves with young women, and they it's a way of escaping the age pill for them. Even if they and the thing is, I'm not even saying that they're getting anything out of it, per se. They may not even be getting anything. They might just be getting like that they're being acknowledged. It's sort of like a parasocial thing. They still want they want young women to be physically present around them, and that actually has value in and of itself.
speaking as someone who's actually been through what I'm about to talk about, the exact same thing could apply to easily um, lusting over women after you've gained a certain amount of power. Like you think you're safe once you have a certain amount of power, but it's just like the power more or less goes away the more you spend more time focusing on how great women can be purely because they're attractive, and it's not only that, but you also neglect other issues which could make your life substantially worse.
Yeah, now I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I have personally, where there's like this generation break between women that were born in the uh, baby boomer generation and later. And I'm talking like the older women, the aging women. So these would be like the grandmas. Versus the women that came from previous generations before them. There's still some of them around. They're pretty old now, like they're in their 80s or older. But there are some silent gen and even a few earlier gens of women. And I've noticed, like, I remember my grandmother's generation. My grandmother was born in 30. Let me just think here. She was born in 1930, I believe. Yeah, 1930. Um, that generation was like they had this way of transitioning where they would go from uh okay, so now I'm a young woman, now I'm married, okay, I'm a mother now, I'm going to learn these domestic skills, and now my children are adults now, I'm going to start taking on a more indirect role with helping my children raise their children, and doing things like learning how to make jams and learning how to knit and sew and make little things like that sort of stereotypical grandma stuff. You don't really see that with baby boomer women. You know, like that generation is going to be for us, some younger millennials. We're going to be the last ones that see that, because the baby boomer women that are going to be the grandmas, they've never had that experience. These are like the bra burner, post bra burner women.
The post Robner.
Yeah, like the post feminist women and the post sexual revolution women. Like I'm thinking of
Oh,
when I would talk to some people that are my grandmother's age occasionally, and they would talk about, and I would ask them about what life was like back in the day, and they would talk about how, the men would go out rolling the logs. I'm not even joking. Like, this is one conversation I had with a lady. She was like, the men, after sawing the logs down, they would roll the logs down the river. The ladies would go and they would make the sandwiches for the lunches, and then they would all get together and eat lunch afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. It was a different world, and it's going to disappear in a few years with the death of these women. And we're just going to be stuck with these baby boomer hags.
if I can answer a comment that someone
Yeah,
typed
sure.
in, the lady had asked if Gen Z will also struggle with aging down the road, as it values youth more so than millennials, and it's not really mentioned here, but also boomers as well, since they grew up with social media. They could. They absolutely could, and when they could, and when they will, if some of them will, um, they're really going to feel a palpable sense of palpable sense of them having a burden on them. Um, sorry. One way that this could happen, they could be prioritizing way too much on not just that, like they could be prioritizing way too much on them on just being happy about life, but not really changing whatever sort of like some of these people may have certain situations that would end up prohibiting them from living a greater future. So if they don't really change those sort of situations and just keep focusing on how happy life is, inevitably they're going to keep running into different ways to cope. And when they don't really have any copes, they're just going to
Oh yeah,
eventually end up aging.
Zoomers
Although
are in a
this wouldn't really
really
come out through
Zoomers are
that. This
almost
wouldn't really come.
born in this really um, this zero sum mindset where it's like everything is downhill. Like you're now seeing the quarter life crisis where Zoomers are hitting 25 and they're freaking out. And I'm not saying that to make fun of them at all.
It's it's not just that. Like some of these people can start balding by the time they're like 22 or something. I'm not balding at all. I don't even think I even could, although
Yeah,
I won't really say that, but
I
basically I'm
mean,
just not
part of
balding.
it is just the stress of like, I don't think there's any generation in recent memory since maybe the Great Depression that has dealt with as much all at once as Zoomers have. In fact, I would even say that Zoomers are unique in human history because not only are Zoomers facing this enormous transformation in how social behavior works because of everything transitioning online in the last 10 years or so. Uh, they're also dealing with this financial, like multiple financial crises. You know, millennials are dealing with that as well, but millennials at least had this sort of, I would say like 1970s to 1970s to 2010s uh, gradient of social norms. Like it was like behavior in terms of how people formed friendships and families. It was still sort of the same. It didn't change that much between those two, between I would say 1970 and 2010. You know, people went to bars, they went to clubs, they went to churches, they went to whatever. Like they would go out and physically socialize. You would have a circle of friends that you would interact with, and you would form your relationships through, say, for example, you have a circle of friends and there's a girl you like, she likes you too, and you get together. That's how it would typically work from the 1970s right up until the 2010s. Not perfectly, there was a lot of problems there as well, but it was still coherent. Like you could still, if you took somebody from 1970 and you dropped them in 2000, like they would be blown away by the technology, but they could at least understand how to pick up a chick. They would go to a bar and be able to talk to girls at the bars. Now it's a completely different situation. Like you could, if you took somebody from 2000 and you dropped them in 2025, they would be at a loss on what to do. They would have no idea what to do. You know,
Not to mention,
and
it's also
you pair
harder.
that
It's also
with the economic changes that are happening, especially with automation, with outsourcing. Um, you have the national interests of certain countries that are combining with the private interests of business classes in America. For example, you know, India is like Indians are really easy to shit on. Like they get a lot of shit. In some cases, it's completely understandable. But in a lot of cases, they're just in a desperate economic situation because of the state of India, and so they are doing whatever they can to get out of the country. And the business class in America and in European countries are more than happy to facilitate that. They benefit directly from that, you know. And this is what the 21st century is going to be. Like, okay, we talk about the JQ. Okay, I think the JQ that we're all thinking of, that is going to be solved within the first half of the 21st century. Hopefully, in a way that is peaceful and everyone makes out all right. But it is going to be resolved at one way or another in the first half of the 21st century. The second half of the 21st century, that is going to be the Indian question and the African question. Like these enormous population centers that are going to, like India in particular, is going to be facing an ecological crisis. Like they're destroying their ecosystem just due to the sheer size of the population, and eventually they're going to need to get out and go somewhere else. And there's a lot of guys like Elon Musk that see opportunity there because these are not stupid people necessarily. There are plenty of intelligent Indians, and they're more than willing to outcompete Americans for their jobs if they can.
also going back to my topic of stress. Well, not really my topic. Someone
Yeah.
else's topics from someone else's comment. Um, a big problem that causes a lot of people to go through stress is that they can't really get the proper notches under their belt. Like I don't really know if it's a lot of them per se, but at least for my situation, like for me, it's kind of hard for me to get sex. First of all, it's kind of hard for me to ask any woman out, and I kind of have a pretty average face anyway. Something I thought about if I even have to think about whether or not it'd be a good idea, not even a good idea. Like if I even have to think about whether or not a woman would say yes to me asking her out if she's of age, the answer is most likely going to be no. 10 times out of 7.
Okay. Yeah. But what's the context here? That
The context is if you don't really have that under your belt, you're basically going to be almost wandering through life.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
confused,
that's
so
true.
life would be passing you by.
Actually,
And
something
the
I was
way
thinking of, because there is something unusual about how the herbivore phenomenon in Japan is different from the inkwell phenomenon in Western countries, where with the herbivore, that you see a much greater degree of passivity and just a lot less concern. And whereas with men in Western countries, you see an enormous amount of frustration uh, going on. But I actually think as time goes on, because okay, so for the younger millennials, like actually Raymond's a good example of this. To talk about Raymond, he is I think he's 35, so he's an example of a millennial that grew up during the time when there were still circles of friends, like there was still the old school way of socializing. Social media was just starting to emerge. I think when he graduated high school, if I had to guess, just based on his age. Um, so he was one of those guys, and he's around my cousin's age, and it's a similar story for my cousin, who had like a relatively normal experience, and then just hit a wall. And that you hear a lot of millennials talk about this, like they just are like, okay, I was fine right up until or basically right up until like 2016, 2017, whatever, any years like that, and then I just hit a wall and I couldn't get anything after that. It's like somebody pulled the plug with, and this creates enormous frustration because they got something, but then they got it taken away. It's kind of like, and obviously I'm talking about pussy here, right? uh it's kind of like if you start smoking and you get addicted to smoking, and then someone takes away your cigarettes, and then you are craving it all the time because you're addicted to that. Well, for the Zoomers, they grew up without even, like, a lot of these guys are KHHV, like they've never experienced anything. Well, in a sense, there's a certain strength to that, in that you don't know what you are missing. You are able to tolerate the absence a lot better because you don't know what you would otherwise be enjoying. Uh, and it makes you wonder uh, how this is going to change things, because like a lot of the red pill stuff and a lot of the simping, that was driven by guys that were just really desperate for pussy. Well,
I don't really think that. Sorry, I've been thinking a lot about this, and to tell you this, I don't really think that the last time the plug would have been pulled would have been by 2016. I think that if anything, the last time it would have been pulled, like the last time the plug would have been pulled, would have been by 2014. Because the situation with millennials, it has been going on for a long time. Like the problems, questions, and issues had always been present with millennials for quite a while. And if anything, I think the problems would have started at some point from either 1990 or up to 1995, I would say. But it's somewhere from that time frame where the problems with millennials would have started, and it namely would have to do with the dissatisfaction of men, as women would have put it.
yeah, so it's not like all of a sudden, maybe I shouldn't have used the term switch, where it's like a switch went off, but it's more so, if we're talking about a society wide level, it's more like more and more, a larger and larger share of men were hit with this problem as time went on. That's really what you see.
And yeah,
Um, like you can see with the birth rate here, birth rates were going down. You could see that there's an increase in birth rates going down due to fewer couples, and the trend has been going since the 1960s, and it's been steadily building up. And then it hit a wall around 2000, and then it started to really tick up after that.
it's
It's
helpful to know that this, for the most part, had to do with. Well, when I said women's dissatisfaction of men, for one, I'm mainly referring to the liberal women's dissatisfaction of men, and this mostly had to do with the fact that their fathers and even some other parent, what should we call it? Some other maternal, no, like other figures that happen to be guys, but namely their fathers. You said that, Mercer, you said that they never really supported social change or whatever, but really it was just them serving as an inconvenience to these women in whatever way possible. It's just the worst of it happened to be done through them not really supporting social changes. And this kind of would have reflected on the guys that they saw as options to date in the near future.
Well, yeah, my position has always been that I don't think there are differences between how men and women behave towards choices. It's not like they're completely interchangeable, but I do think that if we're talking about how men and women react in the market sense towards their options, women are like men would be acting not too differently from how women are acting if the ratios were reversed in terms of if there was weight in excess of women relative to men and men had the pick of the litter. I could see men also behaving in a similar way to how women behave, at least in some areas, because we would be able to, we would have the option to do that. But where was I going with that? Like I'm trying to think where I was going with that. I had a point that I was going to make. So this is a problem with live streaming, is that you can't sit down and think.
Trust me, I'm suffering through this problem
Anyways,
a lot worse than you.
By the way, I just brought in Cyber Dino, who's
Hey, Cyber
we've
Dino.
been sort of bloviating on non-economic stuff. Cyber Dino tends to prefer talking about economic stuff. Do you have anything to add, Cyber Dino?
About what? The boomer problem?
Yeah,
Indians?
anything you feel like.
What's going on with that? Well, I just wanted to speak about my experiences working with boomers in a grocery store. I know this is probably only tangentially related, but I've asked boomers about the Social Security and Medicare system in America because for non-Americans, Social Security and Medicare take up about 66% or 2/3 of the federal budget. And I would have conversations with boomers about this, like, hey, we could really save a lot on the federal budget if we cut back on Social Security and Medicare, because it's, in a sense, it's bankrupting our country. And it doesn't matter who the boomer is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter what gender or race they are. They always advocate for Social Security. And what they'll end up responding with is, that's not my problem. That's for the younger generation to figure out.
Yeah, it's they seem to think that it's just something that was God promised it to them, like Moses was given the commandments and it was passed down like a covenant. It's like, no, it's not.
Social Security and Medicare was promised 2,000 years ago.
It was promised to us 3,000 years ago. No, that's not how it worked. It's now when it was first established. I mean, I don't understand why they didn't see this coming ahead of time. Like, I don't know, maybe they just didn't think that the birth rate would invert the way it did. But at least in my mind, it would be obvious that having a social security system, unless you have a perpetually growing population, it's a Ponzi scheme. Like when Social Security was set up first, it was very solvent because there was not that many old people. The old people were what, the greatest generation, I think, when it was set up. A lot of them died in the wars, and a lot of them were chain smokers that died early anyways. So the the tax burden was a lot less, and they're like, well, we were promised this, and it's like, who promised you this Social Security? Oh, you promised yourself that Social Security. You promised yourself Social Security with us as your collateral. And we're like, you know what? I don't think we like that deal.
Yeah, that's the problem, or that's one of the problems with the boomer generation, is that they implemented a system that would have to be taxed or funded by the future generations, which are their children and grandchildren.
Yeah, that they didn't have to a substantial degree.
Yeah, but another thing I'd like to add is that when Social Security was implemented, the life expectancy was far lower. And now, I mean, life expectancy is due to increase. I mean, boomers, for every year a boomer lives, that's hundreds, maybe tens or hundreds of millions of dollars added to Social Security and Medicare. And it's similar in every Western country where they have this elderly healthcare system. That's why a lot of these politicians are speaking about raising the retirement age. Simply by raising the retirement age by 2 or 3 years, they save tens of billions of dollars in taxpayer money. And obviously, boomers are crying a fit about this.
Well, yeah, and
But
another way that they do
logical,
it.
though.
What's that?
I mean, it's entirely logical if you wanted to cut back, because I mean, it's not like the boomers are producing anything anymore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then also on top of that, um, you have to, um, yeah, the means test. Yes, the means test will be a thing. But on top of that, you have to ask yourself. I mean, it's a really gruesome way of thinking about it, but it's true. Like at some point, you have to say, when is enough for uh, perpetuating these people's lives? Like, I think of my grandmother, or my great grandmother rather, who died at 96, and in the last 5, 6 years of her life, she was just hunched over a table sipping a straw with water in a cup. That was her entire life for the last 5 years of her life. She, like basically immobile. And I'm wondering, is that really, are we going to sacrifice the entire economy to keep boomers going in this state? Because eventually that's what it's going to be. Like, what are we going to do at that point? We better hope that we have automation up to par. But this also means, by the way, if even if you were to cut back on Social Security, let's say, and we know this because we can look at other countries like Canada, for example, and Australia, New Zealand. Our social security systems are not very good, like in terms of the amount of money you get versus the cost of living. Boomers in Canada, at least I can say for certain, rely heavily on their housing equity, taking money out of their housing equity to finance their lifestyles. So what will happen is if the boomers, if they take out Social Security, they will just start pumping the housing market again in order to pump equity back into the houses so that the boomers can live off that equity. Like they're going to find some way of extracting that one way or another. And that's how we did it. And of course, how do you do that? Well, you can't just print dollars. Like the way that Canada did it is we did quantitative easing of people, where we just brought in millions upon millions of people, mostly from Punjab, to enter our Ponzi scheme economy and keep the rental market going, even though there's no economic productivity here. You know, that's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to keep it afloat. I don't know if the U.S. can actually, now that I think about it, because the U.S. is such a huge country. It's not like Canada and Australia, where you could just dump a couple million people in it, and that'll be enough to drive the housing through the roof. I don't know if the U.S. I don't know if there's enough people you could dump in. They'd certainly try, though.
Yeah, hypothetically in America, you could ease the pain of immigration by dispersing the population throughout each of the 48 continental states, but that's not what's happening. A lot of them are concentrating in. Oh, sorry, 1 second. 1 second.
Yeah. Well, I think I know where he's going with this. Yeah, we're getting quantitative easing of Punjabis. That's what we're getting, Punjabiflation.
Yeah, I was just going to add that most of these immigrants are concentrating in where the capital is, near the cities or in the metropolitan area of the cities. And a lot of the locals, even in the suburban areas, are feeling the pressure through higher rent prices.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not just localized to the cities anymore. I mean, a lot of them are starting to pour into the suburbs now.
Yeah, this is what's happening in Canada. They're everywhere in Canada. Everywhere. You cannot escape them. Because they come in through student visas, and we have all these, like strip mall fake colleges that were opened up. They're starting to shut this down because of what a disaster it's turned into in Canada, but the damage is done. I mean, these people are not going back if they can avoid it. And they
Yeah.
will stay as illegals. We don't have our version of ICE. Our version of ICE does not exist. We cannot enforce deportations. It's like a trust system that we have. So
Yeah, I was just about to say that the illegal immigration has been getting suppressed due to ICE deportations, but they're making it easier for H-1Bs to enter America, and then they're also granting amnesty to seasonal farm workers who are illegal. So they are retarding the growth, but they're creating more legal avenues for immigration.
well, yeah, I mean the H-1Bs, they drive down costs. That's what they're primarily concerned with. They use China as a boogeyman. I don't even think they see China as a real long-term threat, but China is a good excuse. They can use China as an excuse to justify destroying the economy for skilled workers through H-1Bs.
I'm guessing they mostly use China as an excuse because they got the idea that China likes to think of themselves as superior to Americans.
Well, no, China is just large enough as an industrial power that it does pose an economic challenge to the U.S. But the thing is, once you become the world reserve currency, it is very hard to get off that because of how convenient it is to use U.S. dollars. This is what people don't realize. I think even now, over 90% of all international transactions are done through U.S. dollars. Because you know that every other country owns U.S. dollars. So there's a huge amount of inertia holding that system in place. But it's like a Faustian pact. It's like a Faustian bargain, because once your dollar becomes the world reserve currency, other currencies can undercut yours, and you cannot respond in kind. And other countries can put tariffs on your stuff, and you cannot put tariffs on their stuff, because if you put tariffs on other countries, that will reduce your viability as a world reserve currency. So what ends up happening is what you see, and you saw this in the UK as well with the British Empire, is that gradually all the other industries just get sucked away, and finance just becomes this bloated behemoth that consumes the whole country. And the UK is exactly like this. It's basically the City of London and its financial instruments, and then it's just a giant welfare state. And the US I don't think the US will be as bad as the UK in that regard because of just how valuable American land is. Like, you could flip things around tomorrow, but it would require abandoning the world reserve currency status, and that would be a disaster from a geopolitical point of view.
Wouldn't the dollars come back flooding into the United States?
Yeah, you'd have to basically either default on the debt or just adopt a new currency. But they could, because this is America we're talking about. Like, America could just abandon the U.S. dollar, start a new currency, and then within, I would say, 30 years, they could be back up and running. Just because of how valuable the landmass is, how valuable the location is, how strategic it is, resources, etc. Like, they're in the perfect situation to weather this thing. But the people that would suffer the most are the people that control the system as it is now. So they do not want that to happen.
I'm well aware that the UK's land isn't really that very big. It's relatively small, but do you know of any valuable assets the UK may have?
No, they stripped pretty much everything down to the bone. They don't have any industry left. Trying to think. Because, yeah, I mean, they keep the British pound for its financial instruments. They don't keep it for its productivity. People use the City of London to move money around and to make investments in insurance, for example. Like, the City of London has a lot of insurance companies, like international shipping insurance. There's a lot of money to be made there. But the rest of the country is basically just an appendage that's stuck onto London. That's how it works. And do you plan on staying in the city or going rural? Honestly, I would prefer to just get out of Canada if I could. That would be my first goal. Go somewhere cheap. Maybe the Philippines, Thailand, somewhere like that, warm. Latin America, maybe, and just watch this thing go down in flames because I don't see a good outcome. I don't see a good outcome for anyone here.
Yeah. I mean, you can come to America too. It's a better loot dungeon.
Yeah, yeah. One of you guys has to hide me in your closet or something, or hide me upstairs in your attic. I'll
Yeah,
have to hide from the ice raids until Trump leaves office.
I think you'll be pretty safe from the ice raids because you're white, so they're not even gonna suspect you of being an illegal.
Oh yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they'll do the non-discrimination thing and they'll just check as a courtesy. Who knows?
Wait, Mercer, about the UK. I'm gonna try not to sound as pro MGTOWish as possible, but based off what I heard, how more likely is it that people in the UK are likely to be jacked than in the US?
How likely is it people in the UK are going to be what?
Jacked, like muscular.
Jacked? Probably. I would doubt there's much of a difference. I don't think it makes a
Doubt
big
there's much.
difference there. Yeah, I have heard. I don't have any proof of this, but it's just been word of mouth that I've heard that it's easier to date in the UK than in America. Like the standards that women have are somewhat lower. Not like a massive amount lower, but it's not as bad. That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't been there in a long, long time. So not as an
Maybe
adult.
aware of that in the grand scheme of things. If they've been paying attention to U.S. culture.
Yeah. Wait, Kanji doll. This reserve currency phenomenon you keep bringing up is interesting. I don't know where to start reading up on it. I would say the first place to start would be let me just think. Where did I even get started on this shit? Because I used to be a Lulbertarian back in the Ron Paul days. So I sort of absorbed a lot of the monetarist Peter Schiff, Murray Rothbard stuff. But I was taking it from the sound money perspective. But as time went on and I started to read more sources, like one that I think is a good source to read. I don't know if he still does good stuff now because he's quite old now. But there's a guy called Paul Craig Roberts who was the assistant Treasury Secretary under Reagan, I believe. He's done a lot of good stuff on monetary policy and how it works. Let me see if I can actually hold on. Oh, Craig Roberts. He does a little bit of conspiratorial stuff, but his stuff when it comes to like how Russia's economy compares to the U.S., it's really excellent stuff. Here we are. Hopefully this doesn't get me nuked. I don't think Paul Craig Roberts is a dangerous guy as far as algorithms go, but who knows? That's a pretty good source. It was Minnesota has beautiful women. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, but they're probably taller than me because I'm 5'8" rounding up. I'm like 5'7" and 3/4 or something. So
Unbelievable.
they're mogging me probably. Yeah, ask Thomas White, let you check up with him. Yeah, maybe he has a spare room. Who knows? And Kanji to adopt a new currency. That's not even well. Of course. I mean, what's the currency supposed to be used for? I mean, the currency is supposed to be used to purchase goods and services within the territory of the state. You know, as long as your state is under your control. And like you're not being ruled by like a colonial power or something. As long as you're in control of your own country, you can issue your own currency. It doesn't really matter. I mean, that's what the Germans did in after you know who came to power. There was a finance minister called Hjalmar Schacht, and he introduced something called the MIFO bills. And the MIFO bills were basically just IOUs. And he gave these IOUs to German industrialists in order to rearm Germany. It's basically a promise to pay once the economy gets kickstarted again. And the German industrialists took that deal, and they allowed for they put their industry into motion holding these IOUs, and then the German industry roared back to power, and those IOUs got paid back in full, because it's the actual productivity of the people that determines the value of the money. It's not like the money itself has some intrinsic value. It can have intrinsic value if you're using gold or silver or something, but that's not necessarily a property of the money. I lived in Thailand for 6 months. Beautiful place for sure, though I did get homesick. Man, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could get homesick at this point. Like I'm getting sick of Canada in Canada. I'm getting local sick. What's the opposite of homesick, where you feel sick when you are living in your home country? Is there a term for that?
Involuntary.
I don't know. It's just a joke. But yeah, crazy that 5'8" is seen as short. I mean, it is. I would say, as far as the height pill goes, it's not so much the being tall is super, super desirable. Like, it does help, of course. But it's more so that being short looks min. And if you're shorter than the average woman, or even like within an inch of the average woman, that's where it's like the death zone. That's where your situation gets really bad. I remember seeing studies on this. I got to pull those up at some point. It's been a long time since I looked into old school black pill stuff, but yeah.
I was trying to look up some articles regarding old school black pill stuff, and I found out that they were taken down just now.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are taken down.
I wonder what that has to even say about anything.
Yeah.
Also, you
Barium
feeling
6.2, and it's viewed as nothing in the UK, yet well liked in countries like Sweden. Yeah, I mean, it can vary. What I found typically is people will complain about what they're missing the most, and I have to admit I do that too. I will seethe about being a manlet, but it's because that's what I am. If I was 5'11", but I had a fucked up face, that's what I would be seething about. It's just natural. It's like sliding scales. It's like you remember, if any of you guys are old cells, you may have played Oblivion, where you could do the sliders, and then you could slide the faces into like really screwed up, like create a really ugly, hideous face. And you do it with the sliders by sliding one slider to the very end and the other slider to the opposite end. That's kind of how face versus height works, Like if your height slider is way on the other end, your face slider has to be way to the extreme to make up for it, and vice versa.
Rehab made a video.
Mystic Johan, what's the difference between the dark pill and the BP? There is none. It's just that the BP is censored. So that's the only difference.
Wait, Mercer. Can I ask a few things before I end up leaving?
Yeah, sure.
I'm getting to leave in like 30 minutes. Cyberdino, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna add that face, I mean, statistically, is harder to get right than the height. It's harder to get those proportions in place, the eye distance, the gonial angle, jaw body, but it's easier just to have a tall height. I mean, Rehab room made a video about this, where beyond a certain point, or beyond a certain height, face becomes more important, and it's usually after 5'10". After 5'10", you will get a marginal increase in attractiveness by being taller, but after 5'10", it's really the face that takes the cake.
Rehab Room said that your height, I think it was Rehab Room that said that your height is basically like your broadcasting tower, which on its own gives it its own sort of effectiveness. But yeah, I do agree. Women will always tend to go for the face, and not even just for a woman, but like really anyone will take you. Anyone will treat you very well, depending on how good your facial bones are. Like depending on how good looking your face is, purely if you have the right facial bone lengths and everything.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a bit of a meandering, but just to get back to economics, this is something I remember finding a little while ago. So this is a little outdated, but GPT-4 passes the bar exam, what that means for artificial intelligence tools in the legal profession. Now, I will make I don't know if anything's changed since then, but I will say I suspect that the legal profession will actually be quite limited in how it's impacted. And the reason why is because they're lawyers, so they can just craft some legal way of avoiding their jobs being outsourced or avoiding their jobs being automated by AI. They'll come up with some legal wrangling for it. But it does go to show that and this doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be able to do the whole job of a lawyer, but it means they can massively speed up a lawyer's workflow. And that means how many lawyers do you need at that point? You know, we're already reaching that saturation point.
Yeah, I guess lawyers will only be used for the more complicated cases. The smaller cases will probably be.
They need people to argue in person, right? So you need to have lawyers argue in person for cases. That is true. But the question is, what percentage of those do you need versus the rest of the legal infrastructure? And like how much of a lawyer's work is going to be automated away with these tools that you can just use to search given cases? You don't have to do the manual research anymore. You know? So it's going to be, we're entering in interesting times. Hang on just 1 second.
I think this is what happens when the value of men's labor becomes greatly decreased.
What's that? Sorry?
Namely, the value. I said this is what I think this is what happens when the value of men's labor becomes decreased, especially by AI in general.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. And, you know, men are unusual compared to women because men don't have any innate value. Our value is entirely based on what we can do, like what we're able to do. That's our value. For women, their value is it's existent. It's who they are, you know? This is what I was talking about in my economics video. This is why I think the economic changes that have happened have psychologically impacted men a lot harder than women, because it's made a large portion of our identity irrelevant. You know, and this is on top of us losing things like our national identities. You know, like we don't have our national identities anymore. We have to be individual men. Well, now we can't even be individual men that are able to be of value to women. You know, actually, this is something I thought about. If you think about it from a Darwinian perspective, okay, women were dependent on men to take care of them historically, right? Like they were the ones that carried the babies. If you put a woman in the state of nature, she's just going to starve to death. Like they can't take care of themselves in the state of nature. Unlike, for example, other ape species. Like if you look at chimpanzees, you look at gorillas, you look at orangutans, whatever, their females can take care of themselves on their own. Human females really can't. And they're also, the birthing process is much more dangerous for women, human women, than for apes, female apes. What this means is that women are hardwired to search for a man's usefulness on like a biological level, whereas for a man, the men who found women innately endearing and innately desirable, those are the men that would take care of the women, and their children would be the surviving children. They would be selected for. So for men especially, men have this like natural selection that has happened over eons probably, to find women just endearing in and of themselves, and just want to be around women, want to interact with women, not even just purely sexual stuff. Like, we're talking just the very nature of women, finding women endearing. There's probably like a deep Darwinian element there.
Do you think that's consistent across all races, or more pronounced in one over the others?
I've probably not, very few things are consistent across all races. So probably there's differences if we look at the fine tooth comb, but I would say generally this would be what you would see. At least if we're talking about first world Western countries, maybe Asia.
Hey, Mercer, so some points I have in mind. First of all, since we were talking about women being hardwired to look for for men that can live good biological genes, I think as you so put it. Mermy Jakes told me that. Wait, hey,
Hey, we just brought
fine.
Drolix in here. He's going to be adding to the conversation, but just before you can finish off your point there, Sonaba. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You can finish your point if you want.
Oh, okay. He said that correlation with intelligence and good looks is not a thing. It really is. I don't have the studies for it right now. I think they may have been taken down, but so I'll post it in the comment section later.
Okay, yeah,
But
I wasn't exactly correct on that. That's true, but the correlation is relatively low. It's like 0.2 or so. It's not a large correlation. And I would also argue that if you were to take off the like genetic anomaly cases on the far low end of looks, you would probably see that diminish even more. Like if we were to remove actual genetic anomalies, because typically people that have congenital disorders that make them mentally retarded will also have physical anomalies that make them ugly. You know, that's typically goes hand in hand. But yeah, you're right. It's not that there's no correlation. It's that there's relatively little correlation. It's a low
but no, my
correlation.
point was, if someone looks to be if someone looks to be stupid, if someone seems to be stupid, it's probably because they are stupid. Like if they look stupid, they're probably going to do something stupid at some point or another. And this is something I've even seen in personal examples that I just cannot divvy out here.
Yeah, probably. So I can agree generally that if I could amend that video, I would say the correlation is very low. It's just not zero. I was incorrect about that. But anyways, Drolix, would you like to make your debut with us here?
Yeah, I think it's first time I've been on your stream.
Yeah, exactly. I think, can you turn your mic up a little bit?
All right, let me see what I can do.
And what's Mystery School up to these days? Mystery School apparently just sort of disappeared. Like he just lost interest in it. His Discord is still up, but he's not active.
Is that any better?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah, I think it was 85%. I put it to 110.
Yeah. It's still a little quiet, but I think that's good enough.
I can turn it up more. Let me see.
So I had
Any
mentioned you
better?
earlier. Yeah, that sounds good. just for some recap,
Yeah.
I'd mentioned you earlier in the stream in the context of how AI is really streamlining a lot of the uh, processes that would have been taken care of by, for example, junior devs at an earlier time. And I'd mentioned that you were talking about it, that you found that you could make it way more optimized in terms of the amount of time it would take to do these things. You would need far fewer junior devs, if any, right? Something along those lines.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm a coder cell or professional coder cell. I use AI at work on the daily. In fact, it's kind of like mandatory now that you have to use AI. And I had a like maybe I would say 3 or 4 months ago. I really didn't give a shit about AI, as in like whatever. This thing is just a fad, so to speak. But then when you like actually set your ass down, like you sit there and you actually use it, and like the more you use it, you're just like, holy fucking shit, like this thing is incredible. I'm just gonna say it. It's just retardedly incredible. And yeah, like a lot of these companies now are mandating that you have to use AI. At least at the company I'm working at, it's you gotta use or what should I say? Your AI competency is now part of your performance review,
Yeah, I'm not
if that
surprised.
makes sense.
I'm not
Yeah,
surprised.
so yeah, going forward, I think this 2025 was the year for AI in terms of in the workplace. And yeah, going forward, 25. So like essentially my year-end review for 2025 will now include how competent you are in AI and how to use the AI tools and all that.
Jesus, grim.
Yeah. And I think for certain parts in terms of my job, it's fucking ridiculously improved efficiency, like 800%. So as a coder cell, you gotta implement features, then like write test cases and all that shit. And in terms of like unit tests, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like with a few prompts, it's like it will just do it for you. And
Yeah,
so, before, like it probably would take me maybe an hour or two, depending on, how much that particular pull request was. But then it's like now it's just like I've started to figure out like what are the good prompts, like how to ask it direct questions. So in terms of like, unit test wise, it's like, hey, I want this, watch out for this, focus around this. And it's literally just type it in and type in the prompts, let it do its thing. 5, 10 minutes, done. Like literally my job is just to review. And it's like, yep, that's good, that's irrelevant, that's shit. Uh, Rewrite this to actually test it on, like the exact assertion, I should say. And so, yeah, it's like what used to take me like 1 or 2 hours, literally fucking 10 minutes.
yeah, yeah. And it's not like there's going to be a flat layoff across the board of say 20% of the workforce in a given industry. What typically happens is they just pull up the ladders from new hires, and they'll just, as the company grows, they'll just fill in these new slots with people that they've already put resources into training, typically, right? It's usually how these things are structured. People have a
Yeah,
tendency
so
to think of it like a video game where suddenly there's an increase in unemployment and all of these units are the same when it doesn't really work that way. It's more like an entire generation will be excluded from entering this field, even if they have the credentials.
Yeah, so the implication is fucking grim. Like, I think there's very few cases where like AI is gonna entirely replace people. So, what usually typically happens is like, okay, I think the best one is like call center, right? Like call center employees, let's say you had a team of like 20, like now you just need 5 people because the vast majority of calls are usually something minor, something stupid. Believe it or not, people just call in to call centers to fucking talk to a human because they're so lonely. But anyhow, aside the point, you don't need 20 people. You just need 5 people. And what happened to the 15? They all got replaced by AI agents that talk to customers and usually will figure out their issues and solve it for them. And for like the really complex shit, then that's when you actually do need a human. So then it's like, yeah, uh, that's where the remaining like, 5 senior customer care agents come in. And imagine that happening across, all the industries essentially. So, and I guess a good example is like, when I had that video of like you've already been left behind, um, like, tech is increasing efficiency across the board on all sectors. And so, the hollowing out effect is what happens. Like people end up in the low skill jobs and then the high skill jobs. And all the middle skill jobs essentially get replaced either by automation or AI.
Yeah,
So you just, yeah, think of the mass increase in low skill jobs and then a mass increase in high skill jobs that has yet to be replaced by AI. And then what's happening now is that on the high end of high skill jobs, a second hollowing out effect is happening. So even at the top level, everything's getting chopped. So if you would
yeah,
think about like employment as a whole from, low, low, mid, high, everyone's just falling off the wagon and getting dumped into the low skill, like go fucking do Uber, go do Instacart, because there ain't no jobs.
yeah,
Like even fucking McDonald's, sweeping the floor and being a cashier is like there's like 20 people that want that job, so good luck.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Zoltan, we're not talking about a speculative future thing. We're talking about what's happening right now. Like we're talking about AI as it is implemented right now.
Yeah, no, this shit's happening today, like literally.
Yeah. It's a grim situation, and this is
Yeah,
why
so then,
I was saying there's going to be
yeah,
a a really hard leftward shift with Zoomers, Zoomer men in particular, at least on economic stuff. Um, and it's easy to predict because you can just see it coming. Like there's going to be no way around this. How do you play
yeah,
this off
and
in a way that doesn't implicate the free market? Because I mean, the free market's just functioning the way it should, right?
yeah, and like it's really hard to tell the average Joe like what's happening even at the high skilled end of the industry or the, employment market, because most people don't even, experience like the high skill industry per se. So they have no fucking clue. But I'm telling you, it is ridiculous. Like AI is just like chopping shit left and right. And so like even that previous example, like the bar exam, the implication is that you don't need like, a team of 10 lawyers. You just need maybe 5.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't need to replace the entire workforce. You just need to replace a portion of it or make their jobs so efficient that you don't need as many of them. And
Hmm.
as I was saying earlier in the stream, we had the same problem happen with the Industrial Revolution, but we were able to counteract that because everybody was involved in the primary industries. This would be farming and perhaps timber, for example. Um, as a result, when these automation advancements happened, where the need for labor was massively reduced and the efficiency of farming massively increased, this led to uh, a huge oversupply of labor, and they entered into the cities, and this is where the whole proletariat thing came from. But we were able to counteract that because we were able to, through public education, increase the capabilities of the average person so that they could go into other jobs than primary industries, you know, like resource extraction or food. They could do other things with their intellect, and we had an intellectually diverse enough population that we could then reduce the number of people that were in that peasant role to a point where the industries could absorb them. You know, the much more efficient industries could absorb them. We can't do that now. We've already done that. We've already maxed out the cognitive potential of the population. If anything, we're going over the top. We are overeducating people now, like beyond what is efficient, especially in Asia. Places like South Korea. If you look at the PISA scores that South Koreans get, they're very close, almost identical to the Finns. But if you look at how South Koreans educate their children versus how the Finns educate their children, the Finnish education system is very relaxed. Like even by Anglo standards, it's relaxed. Whereas the South Korean system is extremely brutal. Like they have these hagwons where they'll study like 10 hours a day, like 6 days a week. It's absolutely brutal. It's like going to war, basically, their education system. But doesn't produce any better results. Like they've maxed out the cognitive potential of their population. You know, like where are we going to find new outputs for these people that are going to be made excess? Like for these workers that are now no longer needed. What are we going to do with them?
Yeah, that's the next problem, I would say.
Yeah, it is probably going to be some kind of UBI system. I mean, I'm not a big fan of UBI. I think it leads to perverse incentives, but no one else is talking about this. Like, who's the only guy that was really talking about this before AI became big in the news? It was Andrew Yang, and he was talking about how automation would impact trucking, for example. He was like, we need to figure out what to do. Like, we need to figure out a just solution to this. We can't just throw these people out on the street if their jobs get automated. But because he wasn't playing race politics, they drummed him out. Andrew Yang, I mean, because he's a Democrat.
Mercer, I have
Yeah,
one before I end up leaving.
What's that?
Yeah, I just have one more question before I end up leaving.
Yeah,
It
sure.
goes back to what I was talking about with motivating oofy doofies to enjoy working and to actually make working a more tolerable place for them. One thing I was thinking about was that, and this also kind of goes back to whatever I said about assuming that managers know what they're doing. Um, some choices that some of the managers tend to make are also not very rational as well. Um, there is the statement going around that men need to be rational, but the people that would be in charge of them, whether it be for work or for anything else, they may even so much of being prone to making decisions that aren't very rational at all, or are only really done because they really see that little value in the guy worker in question. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. I think it needs to be taken into consideration that some managers they not only don't really care about whatever Goofy Doofy wants or doesn't want, but it's not as if they have value for anything else. It's not as if they're even supposed to be having value in their eyes for having a normal life. So that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah. It brings it back to children and having a social life outside of laboring and producing excess value. That's economically inefficient. Like having families is extremely economically inefficient, especially when you have this excess labor force in other parts of the world. And now you can also see where this dovetails with blank slate views of human psychology, where it benefits people that want to open the borders and move labor around to have everyone believe that we're all interchangeable, that there's no real differences between groups of people. They greatly benefit from that because that would be one of the main barriers to opening borders to labor migration. That, well, actually these people are fundamentally different in essential ways, and that this will alter our society. Like they're not interchangeable. You can't just bring individuals from one country to another and then they'll magically turn into us. But they relied on that fiction. It was necessary.
For the Goofy Doofies, and really for anyone else, I don't really think that a family would be the top priority. I think it would just be at least taking care of another partner and being taken care of by another partner.
Yeah, somebody has to call Franz Ferdinand because Zoltan's getting edgy in the comments. We got to invade Hungary. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's interesting because what's going to be left are going to be the you're going to see the blue collar trades, I suppose, are going to remain intact because they're going to be the jobs that are too intellectually demanding to just have a robot labor do, but they're also, you have to be physically present to do them, like maintenance, for example. You have to be physically present if you're going to be repairing an air conditioner, let's say, or you're going to be putting in electrical. But the problem is that when you make a huge chunk of the labor pool redundant, well, they're going to go elsewhere, and that's where everyone's going. Like, this is where this whole trades are always hiring meme, I think, comes from. It kind of reminds me about how doctors are always in demand, but then when you actually look into it, it's because the Board of Medicine gatekeeps and artificially constricts the supply of doctors through who they allow in the medical program, because it benefits them to do that. You're running into the same issue with trades.
Yeah. I worked in electrical for a little while, and I've said this before in Discord, but a lot of these apprentices are just used for cheap labor, and especially now you have a lot of these young Zoomers pouring into the trades because they see the writing on the wall that STEM degrees and white collar jobs aren't going to be the norm. So a lot of them are just pouring into the trades and construction, but their wages are just not high.
Yeah, they don't need to be. Supply and demand, and there's a huge glut of apprentices relative to journeyman, and it makes sense. Why would you as a journeyman want to train and qualify somebody who is going to compete with you for your work? Why? Like, it's common sense.
Oh, and I had one more thing. In the state that I live in, they increased the time that is required in order to get your electrician's license. And they're doing this with a lot of other trades as well. Carpentry. Carpentry doesn't have a license, but in my state. But plumbing, a couple other trades. But I know for electrical for sure, it used to be 5 years. They've bumped it up to 7.5 years. And now I've seen articles in my state where they want to bump it up to maybe 9 or 10 years to become an electrician.
Oh my God, that's like doctor tier. What the fuck? That's crazy.
Yeah.
My former boss and I were talking about it. I used to work at a warehouse, and he used to be an electrician. And he was telling me that one of his electrician buddies was telling him how they want to change the licensing requirements so that you have to have 10 years or however many hours in excess of 12,000 in order to become an electrician. And they're probably doing this in response to, you know, these Zoomers pouring into the trades in order to maintain high wages for themselves by artificially restricting the supply of labor.
Well, of course they would. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I was gonna add, right? I think it was I forgot which video it was, but they were talking specific to plumbing. And I think in general, like for every, experienced tradesman that has been in the industry that retires, there's like a shortage of 5 people. So there is definitely a need, right, of skilled tradesmen and all that across the board. But then in terms of like the plumbing, it's like, okay, you come in as a apprentice, or I don't even know how like, quote unquote, the ranking system works there. But it's like obviously you start with a apprentice, and I'm sure there's like journeyman and master, whatever. But like because I would say partly the economy, all other factors, including AI, and it's like pushing everybody into the blue collar work. And now they're talking, and no one actually talks about like, it's always glorified, like, oh, become a plumber and become a electrician and all this shit. You could be making 6 figures easy. But then it was a video from a guy that is actually working as a apprentice plumber, and he said like the treatment that you get from the top or your masters or whatever, it's horrible. It's shit pay, and it's just basically what's the word, like war of attrition. It's like how long can you last? Like, are you gonna be the last man standing,
Yeah,
to
I'm gonna.
get there?
Alex has asked me, and oh wait, I need to record this.
Sorry, what
Yeah,
was
I'm
that?
gonna say that. Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say Alex harassed me, and I'm gonna say like, "Fuck you, Drolix, fuck off," and you don't automatically fuck off, and yeah,
You're
Who?
still around?
Yo, who's
Oh
talking right
man.
now?
go fuck yourself, Drolix.
3, 2.
Yeah,
Aren't you guys gonna be
I'm recording this,
talking?
and
Yo, Mercer, just drop this guy. He's a low IQ autist
yeah, I
for.
will.
It's
Yeah,
like a fucking waste of time.
Yeah, I don't know who. I've never heard of this guy. I don't know. So, is there anything to share about this guy, or what? Okay, he's
Yeah,
gone.
where
He's
were
gone.
we? Yeah, we were talking about the plumber thing, and so
Yeah. Okay. All right.
yeah, like the artificial inflation thing is real, like even in doctors and even now in the trades.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse. Because as people sense that the economy is in this sort of permanent stagnation and decline, people are going to start realizing that they can't treat employment as something to be given, as a given. Like you're going to see sort of Indianization of the economy, where you'll start seeing trades being treated almost like a caste thing, where it's passed down from father to son, which I suppose is more traditional in a way, but that's what's going to happen because they're going to realize these skills are what you use to feed yourself and to continue your family. You can't just give them away anymore. It's a zero sum game. There's not a growing pie anymore.
We're returning to trade guilds.
That is exactly what's happening. Um, and that's just on the
a
trade
couple?
end. I've seen this enormously. I really regret not apprenticing under my father, because my father had a bunch of trade tickets. I could have gotten a few of them. It is one of my biggest regrets, but yeah, hindsight's 2020, as they say.
Yeah, it does suck how you need to get in through. How you're more likely to succeed with connections as opposed to actually getting into the job yourself.
Yeah, AI
Yeah,
says,
actually, I wanted to add one more thing, right? I
yeah,
think we even talked about this maybe a couple days ago, but like aside from even the dating problem and women and all that shit, like just to even live your fucking life, Because dating is something that you would do once you have like your shit in order, essentially.
quote
You
unquote.
know, yeah, like how you gonna take a girl out if you're broke per se. But
Yeah.
aside the point, you know, you look back and it's like these fucking boomers were like, oh yeah, I worked at the post office for 30 years. And, it's like I had a stable income, I had a house, I had a family, I had a kid, kids, and the white picket fence and all that bullshit. And it was possible because of their the time and the era that they lived in, that such a thing was, possible. And then you get your pension and you're still set for retirement and all that jazz. But like in today's day and age, like 30 years at a career, it's like unless you started your own business or something and it went well for 30 years, it's like it's just not happening for anybody. And like just think about it, even in a 10-year span. Like I think I'm at my current job for like 8 years now, which is like probably one of the longest jobs that I've had for that long. I'd be surprised if I actually last 10 years at the same company per se. And yeah, and in that meantime, I did survive like, 3 or 4 layoff rounds. So like think about it for the average person in a 10-year span, like how many jobs do you have? It's like easily 5 to 10. Like some people are getting a job like every year or even in 6 months. It's like you get hired, you get laid off. And think about all the fucking downtime in between, like applying and fucking polishing your resume and this and that. And it's like in that 10-year span, you might not even be actually working 10 years. It's probably more like 7 or 8 years if you include all the time that you're, laid off and in between jobs.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
fucking point is, yeah, how is anyone supposed to have a quote unquote a stable, life in this shit economy?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
It's just impossible,
a lot,
yeah.
yeah, a lot of Zoomers are working 2 jobs because they realize that one's not stable enough anymore. If they lose one, at least they have the other one to hold them over.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You gotta literally work 2 to 3 jobs just to make it. And if one goes to shit, yeah, okay, great, you have others. But even then, it's like, how are you quote unquote progressing in anything, right? You're essentially just working these shit jobs and making it ends meet.
Just to sustain yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you consider that a child is a 20-year investment minimum. Usually you also have to help the kid out when it's an adult. Why would anybody seeing this degree of instability? It's not even that it's like I would actually say the birth rate would be higher under a stable but more poorer system where there was more predictability than the current system we have now, where it's just complete instability. Nobody knows what the future is going to hold, you know? Um, in this kind of environment, nobody's going to take that risk. I'm thinking about what happened with COVID-19. Uh, Canada was one of the most brutal countries when it came to lockdown enforcement and vaccine enforcement. And I remember uh, a lot of guys were basically they were cornered. They were coerced into taking the shots because they had to, because their children were dependent on them. They couldn't say no. It's like they couldn't allow themselves to be fired. And then a lot of people see that and they're like, listen, I don't want to put myself in that position where I like have this gun held to my head, which are these children that depend on me. you know and as I said, like, the governments will make noise and pretend to care, but the long-term goal is they just want to import people to replace the people that aren't breeding. That's the long-term goal, even though it's not sustainable in and of itself, because eventually you just run out of people to vacuum out of other countries. you know
The elites will probably flee to another country once this one crumbles.
Yeah, yeah, that could be what happens. And I don't know if it depends on how long they can hold this thing together. They could keep it going for a long time, which would be horrifying, but it's possible.
Well, yeah, they're going to drain the country of as much wealth as possible, and then flee to either South America or some other place that's stable where they can enjoy their wealth in peace, while the rest of the people will have to fend for themselves in a post technocratic, Walking Dead esque nightmare.
The
Yeah.
destination is New Zealand, I believe. I think Zuckerberg and Bezos and all those fags have like a underground bunker.
Yeah, I've actually read into that. So the
The
reason why
the
they
the
go
the
ahead,
issue
go
with
ahead.
New Zealand is that the destiny of New Zealand is too tied to like the destiny of America and really all of the West. Like if everything else has collapsed, I don't see New Zealand faring too much better.
Well, yeah, China would just invade them. Why not? Who's going to stop them?
No, it's not just that China would invade them. That's like the least of their worries because uh, the distance from New Zealand to or even Australia is like incredible. So like the distance between China and New Zealand, like they're half a world away. An invasion is not really something they need to worry about. The problem is that the same social trends that are happening everywhere else are happening there as well. So it's not.
Yeah.
It's not really somewhere you can run away.
Yeah, I mean, they're importing large numbers of immigrants as well, and a lot of them are Chinese. And really, the US is the only major power that allows their oligarchs to do what they're doing, like with the amount of freedom that they have. If the US goes under or the US switches to a regime that doesn't allow that, they will be out of luck because all they have is their money. They can bribe people. That's about the extent to which they can act. Like they can have all the money in the world, but all that has to happen is their mercenaries just point their guns at them instead and just say, "Oh, well, instead of us guarding you from the rest of the planet, how about we just point our guns at you and take your shit from you? And who's going to stop us?" You know, that's ultimately what will happen. And
Mercer, I had a couple. What's the money to make before you leave?
oh god, Darzog, hang on. Darzog's asking about the whites only. Oh boy, I mean it's that story is a little bit interesting. I think it's kind of pointless in the long run because, like what happened with Irania, you cannot create these intentional communities in the United States without having a system that appeals to women in the best way possible because you can't force them to stay there. They have to stay there voluntarily or go there voluntarily. So you can't impose any rules on them that would not exist outside of that community. You know, like for example, adultery laws, let's say. So in the long run, it's just not going to succeed. And also, women don't like being out in the middle of nowhere. You can find some that will, but the vast majority will not. So it's worth the only real good thing I see about it is that they could get freedom of association reified if they get taken to court and they win. That could be a good thing because I mean, having more freedoms to associate is always a good thing. You know, even though I personally wouldn't partake in that type of community, it would still benefit everyone else in America to not have these laws preventing them from doing shit. Yeah, I keep forgetting I'm not an American. I wake up and I realize I'm on the wrong side of the North American border.
I think it cut out.
Yeah, you can offer safety and stability, long-term prosperity. Yeah, but yeah, to an extent, but you can offer that outside of these communities as well. Like you'd have to show where you can get that in the return to the land that you couldn't get elsewhere, right? That would be the main thing. And you also have to, again, you have to convince these people to live in these isolated communities. And is it 80%? What? 80% men, 20% female gender split in their... Is that for real? Is that true? Is it an 80-20? I mean, I would believe that. That sounds about right.
It's just the bare.
What's that?
That's just the minimum, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 80% dudes. I would not be surprised at all. It's like what a couple months ago when the first murder that ever happened in Orania took place. And it was a guy who was working overseas and he came home to his wife fucking some other dude. And so, and then she decided to run off and divorce him. And he murdered her and himself. And so it was a murder-suicide. And this is what happens when you have, and if you look at the comments in that video or the post that was made about the Orania thing, there were all these dudes that were justifying the woman, or they were like attacking the guy, which of course, you know, murdering someone else and then committing suicide, no one's justifying that. But they were attacking the guy as if it was like he was like some kind of a subhuman inkwell or something. Like that was what they were implying. Like only the real manly men let their women cheat and then walk away. And that's the best that they can do in somewhere like Orania because they have to keep the women there. They're dependent on women being invested in the community. They can't do anything against them. It's going to be the same thing with Return to the Land. I mean, if anything, it's going to be worse because there's a very strong drive for white women to want to live in Orania. Whereas for this Return to the Land stuff, I mean, it's, you know, yeah, there's dangers in the inner cities. Maybe you have certain political beliefs, so you'd like to be around people that have those political beliefs, I guess, but that's really the only pull.
Yeah, why would a woman want to give up her social freedom when she's not in critical danger of her life?
Yeah, like this is what you see in Europe. Like there are some countries like France where French women are starting to really turn on immigration and stuff like that. But that's because they're at a point now where it's extremely dangerous. They're past the point where it's already too late. They should have done that 20 years ago. You know?
A worthwhile subject would be to like study the Amish to see how they keep their women around, because if there is a way to replicate that without just like going like 300 years back tech-wise, it would be useful.
Oh, you don't have to. That's not rocket science. They just isolate their communities. So if you're an Amish woman, and I know this because I used to live around Mennonites, not exactly the same as the Amish, but they're related. For these communities, their entire social network and the way that they are taught how the world works, like their religion, their worldview, all their knowledge about the world, is contained within that community. So if they are removed from that community, it's completely alien. Like our way of living is completely alien to them. And that creates a mechanism that keeps them in the community because otherwise they would lose all of their social network and social connections. That's really what keeps them in. But the problem is, in order to do that, you basically have to run like a religious cult. And you have to physically segregate yourself from the outside world. That's how the Orthodox Jews do it, and that's how the Amish and Mennonites do it.
Don't the Amish they have that coming of age event where they have to like go out of the community for some period of time?
Yeah, it's Rumspringa, I think is what they call it.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? To their credit, the Rumspringa, apparently the defection rate for Amish that leave the community, that has actually gone down a lot over the past couple decades. Like they are now retaining over 90% of their people or something like that. You know, which is kudos to them. Good for them. I just don't see that as a solution that would work for all of us, you know? It's not like a society-wide solution. And it certainly wouldn't allow you to challenge the system as it is now. Like the Amish, the reason why the Amish are left alone is because they're like 19th century technology people. Like they pose no threat to the American government. You know, Waco was a bigger threat than the Amish.
It's not just that they're 19th century. I think they're like expressly pacifists. Like even if they did use modern technology, they would not use guns.
Yeah, plausibly. Yeah.
Yeah, they're also heavily isolated from the rest of American society. I mean, they don't allow people to use phones or social media that would taint their minds against Amish doctrine.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a sustainable solution, because you just have to keep running away from outside ideas, and I don't think you will have a healthy society if you have things that operate that way. Like you need to have an open mind for your population if you want to progress. You know, you can't just keep running away. This is what we see. If you look at the Jews actually as a good example, the Orthodox Jews are actually the less intelligent half of their community. The most intelligent ones are all secular. And that's because the Orthodox are extremely inward focused. They run and hide from questioning their belief system. And as a result, anyone who has any intellectual curiosity just leaves, you know?
Yeah, however, the issue with running is that like the non-orthodox options are not sustainable. Like the orthodox are not progressing, but like unless the unorthodox were to expressly start wiping them out, like it would be the orthodox who will survive
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
the long term.
that is true. Like in terms of demographics, yes. I'm just saying if we're talking about the structure of the culture and also perhaps the genetic composition, probably there's a genetic relationship there as well. Like the kind of people that would be more open-minded in their thinking and their ability to be more creative in their thinking, probably greatly limited in those kind of societies. Like there's many negative effects to that. It's sort of the same with, I make a lot of jokes about the Taliban maxing and whatever. I mean, it's, all fun and games, but you can't run a modern society like that. You can run like a medieval style goat herding economy with Taliban style rules where, there's no internet access and half the population's illiterate. Most of the women are illiterate. You can't have a modern competitive society like that. You need to have a society where your women are at least educated and are capable of educating children, your children, that sort of thing.
Also, if you were to implement such a society like Amish people, everyone has already been so occupied by technology that they already know exactly what they need to be entertained by in order to not properly live life, but to live life with the most amount of comfort. And then you also have women knowing what they desire most out of men, which happens to involve good genetics and facial tones. And I'm not really sure if such a system could properly replicate that unless if it did not have chats and question. And even if it did, it'd just be so much virtue signaling that, and it still wouldn't really solve the male loneliness epidemic.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. And just reading here.
The only solution to the male loneliness epidemic is like an enormous war that kills 80% of the population. That's not even like fat posting. I think that's just at this point.
I think I think in the long run, that's what's going to happen between India and Pakistan, because their situation is such that I remember reading an article that was written. This Pakistani general was interviewed because it was at a time when Pakistan was doing this really intense nuclear brinksmanship with India, where they were constantly threatening nuclear war. And the journalist was from the BBC, I think, and he was asking this Pakistani general, like, why are you guys seem like you want you're willing to risk nuclear apocalypse? And he's like, listen, half my population is starving, and they have to travel like 3 miles in baked dirt to get drinking water. The land is poisoned and dying. I mean, we're basically on our way out. So if we can take the Indians out with us, that's what we're gonna do. That basically, it was kind of like this death wish. I wish I could find that article. It was a really good article. That's the psychology.
The India-Pakistan war, like it's something that's always going to be like 2 weeks away, just because of how politics works outside of the West. Like the way to gain approval in those countries is to just like be the most racist against India you can, or be like the most Islamophobic you can, and just constantly have these mock battles on the border. The issue is that like one of those battles is going to escalate into a nuclear war sooner or later.
Yeah.
Which it's going to be a problem because like wars make refugees, and those refugees need to go somewhere.
Yeah, and so you're going to have the libtard left who are going to demand open borders like they always do. And women love this stuff, of course. And then you're also going to have the economic right that wants to take advantage of the situation. And then we're going to have us in the middle who are facing basically the end of our way of life, whatever that is. I mean, we're already sort of facing it. I look at how my mother grew up just in in her photos, and I look at how my father grew up, and I compare it to how I grew up. It's already there's no alignment. It's completely different worlds. But yeah, if
we'll need to see if whether we'll need to see whether that war comes in time. Like, is the West still there when they try to run away? Because like all of the issues are compiling. Like the West has milked the third and the second world dry. Like there's nothing. If all of the Indians were to come and just like even if you were to select them for like the ones worthwhile, I don't think you would find that many left.
You'd be surprised. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And they don't necessarily have to be super geniuses. They can just be competent enough to compete with white collar Americans. They don't have to be the smartest. They don't have to be like what's that guy's name? Bose, who's the Indian physicist who did the Bose. Yeah. Anyways, you don't have to be a Bose. You can be. You can just be a decent programmer or a decent engineer. That'll be good enough.
Mercer, can
I've heard horror stories of, like, at this point, Americans are outsourcing, like, mopping up the Indian code. Like, it's becoming that much of a problem. So, like, I know, like, I'm not saying there's zero of them left. I'm just saying, like, the number is, like, so low. There's like really not that much left to squeeze out. Like at this point, it's like blood it's like blood out of a stone.
Yeah, I'm just gonna see how the stream is going. Still quite popular. I might keep going. What do you guys think? Is there anything else you want to say here? Anything else you want to bring up and talk about?
Wait, can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, just to make this relatively quick, I kind of needed to go somewhere else anyway. I'm not necessarily too sure. I'm not effectively sure what problems and issues the managers are going through, but going back to my point on Woofy Doofies, first of all, Woofy Doofies, they not only want to cope, but they also want the same necessities that some of their managers also need or also have. They also, it's not even like it would be very nice of them for them if they were to have a normal life, but generally speaking, the best way to get that would be, in their minds at least, in the most general sense of the word, not in the more fleshed out determinist sense of the word, but ideally it would be nice if people could have a girlfriend. It would also be nice if people were to have a girlfriend with no issues as well.
That would be nice.
Though naturally,
I can agree with that. I don't think there's any disagreement there.
However, barring any of the issues that would come with that, not only can they naturally just not really get it themselves, but they're already being treated as though they're they're already being treated as though they're so worthless, even down to just working as well. My point is, one pillar or crux of the situation is going to be they can't really get the needs of getting a girlfriend or even having a partner to take care of them, or if they really didn't want to, if that were to somehow be effective. And I don't really think people not having a girlfriend, people actually believing that would really be very bad. It would only real ratios were 1 out of 100, but even if that were to somehow, and that's just going to be a pillar or crux of the issue.
Okay.
A particular one. So I guess my point is, and the point I want to get to, if the managers wanted to find ways to make the economy better, they would have to use the principles of genetic determinism in order to have both sides tolerate each other, basically.
Okay, so you're just basically saying Brave New World. Let's do caste systems.
What?
Well, that just sounds like
Sorry,
Brave
I was
New
basically
World. It's
saying
like
what?
caste systems in Brave New World.
Brave New World? That's
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
I don't
Never
really
mind.
think
All right,
that's.
we're gonna wrap up, guys,
going
because
to.
I'm actually starting to get some technical issues. So it's probably a sign of the times. Thank you very much, everyone that came along. Thank you to Drolix
You're
and Big
welcome.
Cheese, Cyberdino, Sonoba, and everyone in the chat and on the live stream. And